All right, well, good evening, everyone. And I'm going to call to order our council meeting for Tuesday, June the 2nd. And before I begin, I cannot help but start tonight's meeting with some reflections on the events that we are witnessing south of the border. I was horrified to watch the brutal attack of George Floyd. I understand the passion behind the peaceful protests and meaningful dialogues taking place across the United States. What I don't understand is the violence, the rage, and the attacks happening in cities across the country. I don't understand for a number of reasons. Firstly, I don't understand because the suppression and bigotry that many of the protesters are fighting is not my truth or my experience. Secondly, many of these attacks seem to go beyond the protest of the death of George Floyd. While we have not seen these kind of demonstrations in Lucan Biddulph or the County of Middlesex, although I have come to understand that there are a number of peaceful protests that are being organized in our area for Saturday. We cannot be so naive as to believe that these concerns are not in our community. One could argue that we are one improperly handled incident away from these experiences that as of now, we are only watching from afar. I do not understand the response of leadership in the United States. History has shown us that the answer to violence is not more violence. When someone believes that they do not have a voice, stifling and not listening to that voice only provokes them to find other means to be heard. Watching this unfold, my hope is that with the misuse and abuse of power, those oppressed by the power will find the strength to continue to push for change with honest and meaningful dialogue. Without respectful conversation, we cannot learn and we cannot change. So as a municipal leader of a small rural Ontario municipality, what is my role? I see it as sharing with you my truth and humbly hoping it resonates with you as you grapple with what our neighbors are dealing with. Every day I wake up, I have a choice. I choose how I'm going to take on whatever the day is going to present me. Some days it's easier than others, but every day I wake up and I choose the way of love. The parable of the Good Samaritan is a Christian lesson, but it is a lesson that goes across and beyond faiths. The story of the Good Samaritan challenges us to treat our neighbor as ourselves. It challenges us to ask ourselves, who is our neighbor? Racial prejudices or prejudice of others different in any way from us has always been a divider. We tend to distrust those that don't look or sound like us. Yet the Samaritan didn't care about that. He showed us that racism, prejudice, has no place when it comes to common decency. That at the end of the day, we all belong to the same race, the human race. And so I challenge you to remind you that every day is a choice. We must live and work together as equals, as brothers and sisters. If we don't, then we choose chaos over community. In my office, I have this sign that says, do better. As Maya Angelou said, do the best you can until you know better. Then when you know better, do better. So while in Lucan Biddulph, community is the choice, we can always do better. I know I can. We must always work together for the good. And that all starts with a choice. Is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest? Okay, seeing none. Okay, we don't have an in-camera session, but we do have to go into the Committee of Adjustment. So I need a motion and I'll read the motion and then I'll need a mover and seconder for that. Resolved that the Council of the Township of Lucan Biddulph adjourn its regular meeting at 5 minutes after 6 in order to sit as the Committee of Adjustment under Section 45 of the Planning Act, RSO 1990, as amended. A mover and seconder for that. Councillor Regan and Deputy Mayor Manders. All opposed? And that's carried. So now we are sitting in committee form, and I just want to go over a few rules, I guess, about how we're going to proceed as a reminder, since we are in a different format and than we usually meet, and this is our first planning meeting under a virtual setting. So anybody that's watching or anybody that's involved, just bear with us and we'll go through it slowly. So as I say, we're now in the public committee forum, and I will, when I go through all of this, turn it over to our planner, Dan Fitzgerald, and he will walk us through the application and present his report. When his report is finished, I will turn it over to our deputy clerk, who will let us know if we've received any additional comments with regards to the report. After that, I'll open it up for questions from council. After that, the applicant will have the opportunity to speak to the application. And then following the applicant's ability to speak, then we will move into any comments from any public participants. And as I've confirmed with our planner, anybody that wants to speak to this will have already had to have registered and let us know that they wanted to speak. We will acknowledge any written comments from the public, and then there'll be another opportunity for questions from council, and then we will go through the motion procedure of accepting or not. And at that point, it's a verbal motion. And then we have to move out of the Committee of Adjustment. We have to move into a public meeting, which we can discuss the zoning amendment. And there'll be a motion for that. And then I think we can move back into regular council, but I know that Dan and Tina will walk me through if I miss anything. Just a reminder, and I will remind council or the committee of this again. Of course, there's a decision that we're going to come to, and if the decision is successful, it will have to be signed by every member who voted in favor of that, and that will have to be done tomorrow. So you'll have to come into the council or into the township office to sign that, and I'll remind you of that again after. Have I covered everything, Dan and Tina, at this point? Okay, great. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dan, and he can walk us through the staff report and the application.
Yeah, so through you, Madam Mayor, to all council, I'm just going to switch my screen over to subject location map so that everyone viewing the meeting at home as well can see exactly what we're referring to here. So as mentioned, I'm Dan Fitzgerald, and I'm a planner with the County of Middlesex. We are here tonight before the committee to discuss an application for consent for the purpose of permitting the severance of an existing farm from a residence to achieve farm consolidation. It's important to note that this application is considered to be a reverse surplus farmhouse dwelling severance, where the owner intends to keep the house and sell the balance of the farmlands to a numbered company, which is an existing farm operation with alternate land ownership, including a residence on a farm parcel. As such, the applicant's dwelling is considered surplus to the farming operation through the purchase of the lands. The subject property is a 31.9 hectare or 78.85 acre farm parcel, which is located on the west side of Mitchell Line or Highway 23, and is legally described as part of lots 27 and 28, concession 8, parts 2 and 3 of registered plan 33R 12037 in the township of Lucan-Biddulph. The lands are designated agricultural according to the township official plan and zoned general agricultural, or A1, according to the township zoning bylaw. The applicant is requesting to sever approximately 31.04 hectares or 76.7 acres of farmland with a proposed frontage of approximately 125.3 meters or 1,168 feet on Mitchell Line. The lands proposed to be severed contained agricultural land, which is in crop production. They are not serviced, and they maintain their own access off Mitchell Line. The retained lands are proposed to have an area of approximately 0.383 hectares, or just over 2 acres, and a frontage of approximately 73.75 meters, or 241.96 feet on Mitchell Line, and are occupied by a single detached dwelling, an above-ground pool, and various accessory buildings, which include a woodshed, a storage shed, and a detached garage. The surrounding land uses in the area are predominantly agricultural in nature. To achieve provincial policy requirements for the proposed severance, the applicant has also proposed a zoning bylaw amendment to be heard separately to rezone the proposed severed farmland from general agricultural A1 zone to a site-specific agricultural A3 exception zone, which will prohibit the establishment of a future house and also recognize the undersized lot size and reduced lot frontage requirement. The retained lands are proposed to be rezoned from the general agricultural A1 zone to a surplus farmhouse dwelling zone to recognize the residential use and reduced parcel size. Generally, provincial policy, the county official plan, and local official plan permit surplus farmhouse dwelling severances as long as the municipality is satisfied that a farm consolidation is occurring. The lands contain either municipal or private servicing. The dwelling is habitable and constructed prior to 1999. No new residence is permitted to be established, and access to the lands is maintained. As identified in the report, planning staff are satisfied that the criteria for the proposed severance of a surplus farm residence on the lands have been met or can be appropriately addressed by conditions of consent. Notice of the application has been circulated to agencies as well as property owners in accordance with the Planning Act requirements. Comments received were supportive generally, and conditions recommended by the Ministry of Transportation as well as the Chief Building Official have been incorporated into the recommendation. And that recommendation being that application for consent B-5/2020 filed by Tina Melbrick to sever a parcel of land for the purpose of farm consolidation and to retain the disposed surplus farm dwelling, having a lot frontage of approximately 73.75 meters along Mitchell Line, a lot depth of approximately 103.53 meters, and a lot area of approximately 0.83 hectares from a property legally described as part of lots 27 and 28, concession 8, parts 2 and 3 of registered plan 33R12037 in the township of Lucan-Vidal, being located on the west side of Mitchell Line or Provincial Highway 3 and municipally known as 34237 Mitchell Line, be granted, subject to the following conditions: that a certificate of consent under section 53 sub 42 of the Planning Act be issued within 1 year of the date of notice, and that the request of the certificate of consent shall be accompanied by written submissions that details how each of the conditions of consent have been fulfilled. Further, that lands being conveyed to be rezoned to a site-specific agricultural exception zone to permit the frontage and size of agricultural purposes, as well as prohibit any new residential uses. That the lands being retained be rezoned to surplus dwelling zone to recognize the residential use. That the applicant confirm to the satisfaction of the township that the septic system will be wholly contained on the lands being retained in accordance with the Ontario Building Code requirements, and that a 100% contingency area be shown to exist on same. That the lands be conveyed, be transferred to numbered company 806538 Ontario Limited to ensure the consolidation occurs with the existing farm operation. That the applicant initiate and assume, if required, all engineering costs associated with the preparation of revised assessment schedules for any municipal drain having jurisdiction in accordance with the Drainage Act as amended, and such costs be paid in full to the appropriate engineering firm prior to submitting registered copy to transfer. That taxes on the subject lands are paid in full. That the applicant solicitor submits an acknowledgement and direction duly signed by the applicant. That the applicant solicitor submits an undertaking in a form satisfactory to the Secretary Treasurer to register an electronic transfer of title consistent with the acknowledgement and direction of the decision of the Committee of Adjustment. And an address be assigned and number erected for the severed agricultural parcel. That any laneway or access from the residential lands to the farmlands be removed and replaced with a minimum 1 meter wide planting strip. That all retained buildings must be confirmed by a professional engineer to be suitable to support residential accessory use. Building permit may be required if improvements are to be made. That the property be cleaned up and all debris, including vegetation, cut waste, abandoned vehicles, and the like shall be removed, and any wood remaining for wood heat must be stored and stacked neatly. That the applicant confirm that the wood furnace heat pipe running between the shop and the house does not encroach onto the severed lands. That the owners be required to convey to the Ministry of Transportation by deed, free and clear of all mortgages, liens, and encumbrances, a 3.048 meter or 10-foot property widening along the former rail corridor fronting the highway. This widening must be illustrated as parts on a reference plan. A draft reference plan must be submitted to the ministry for review and approval prior to being deposited, as well as a draft of the transfer deed and certificate of title conveying the parts to MTO must be submitted for review and approval prior to being registered. As well, that a new MTO entrance permit shall be applied for and obtained for both parcels defining the site-specific use of each property. That the owner confirm the MTO to the MTO that the access to be retained for farmland via the old rail corridor shall only be used for the farm parcel and not any other adjoining lands. And that 2 copies of the reference plan be submitted to the satisfaction of the township. And the reasons for the decision or the recommendation is consistency with the provincial policy statement is maintained, conformity with the County of Middlesex official plan and the Township of Lucan-Biddulph official plan would be maintained, as well the requirements of the Township of Lucan-Biddulph zoning bylaw are capable of being satisfied through an amendment hereto. With respect to the zoning recommendation for the public hearing as well, we would make the recommendation that an application for zoning bylaw amendment ZNBA 03/2020 for the lands owned by Katerina Agatha Alida Malbrecht and legally described as part of lots 27 and 28, concession 8, parts 2 and 3 of registered plan 33R 12037 in the township of Lucan-Biddulph, being located on the west side of Mitchell Line or Provincial Highway 23 and municipally known as 34237 Mitchell Line, be approved, and that the implementing bylaw be forwarded to the Township Council for consideration once an approved deposited reference plan has been provided to the satisfaction of the township. It's important to note that this opinion is being provided prior to the public meeting and without the benefit of potentially receiving all comments from agencies or members of the public. Should new information arise regarding the proposal prior to or at the public meeting, council is advised to take such information into account when considering the application. Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much for that, Dan. And you did make mention of correspondences, but Tina, have we received anything? Any additional comments?
No, Madam Mayor, we haven't received any additional comments.
Okay. Does the committee have any questions for Dan on the application? Councillor Regan.
Thank you. Sorry, Dan, the question's not specific, maybe not specific to this application, but I was just wondering, because I've seen this before, the MTO entry permit it was number 16, the condition. I'm just wondering why and when does a new entrance permit have to be applied for? Because sometimes I see that, sometimes I don't. I'm just wondering if you can explain that to me.
Yeah, through the chair to Councillor Regan. MTO, basically through the consent process, it's their ability to actually formalize accesses, which may have never been formalized in the past. So it's general practice for them to provide conditions to us to essentially require the applicant to apply for and receive MTO permissions or permits, formalizing those access points. So we've seen it before in surplus farmhouse dwelling consent applications on provincial highways specifically. That would basically formalize or permit those accesses to the lands, and then moreover, what they're really wanting to do is limit any additional accesses that aren't permitted to those lands.
Right. Okay. Thank you, Dan. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
And Dan, just further to that, that's for accesses on MTO roads, right? So provincial highways.
Through the chair, yes, that's correct. So that's only in the situation that the land abuts a provincial highway.
Okay. Yeah. Right. Any other questions for Dan at this time? Okay. Were there any comments that the applicant wanted to make or say at this time? Oh, Ron's just going to unmute you. Just there you go.
Okay. Yeah. No, I had a question earlier, but I forwarded that by email, and that question was answered. And that was just clarification about the municipal drain. But that was sent to me via email. So that was the only question I had.
Okay, great. And then did we have anybody registered to make a public comment? I don't believe so. Okay, if there's no other further comments or questions from the committee, then I just need a motion to accept the report and recommendation as presented. So can I get a mover and seconder for that? Councillor Westman and Councillor Reagan. Any further discussion? All opposed? Oh, Alex, did you have a question? Guess not. Okay, so all opposed? And that is carried. So that speaks to the recommendation. And I just reminding the committee they're going to have to come in and sign that tomorrow. Okay. And then we now have to convene a public meeting under the Planning Act. So do I need a motion to adjourn or just a motion to move into a public meeting?
Point of clarification, Madam Mayor, that can be on the same motion. It can be to adjourn the Committee of Adjustment and to move into the public meeting. You can do that in one verbal motion. Okay.
So you've got the understanding of what the motion needs to be. Can I get a mover and seconder for that? Councillor Regan and a seconder, Deputy Mayor Manders. All opposed? And that's carried. So now we are in the public meeting, and you spoke to the consent application or the zoning amendment application, but is there anything you wanted to add or anything at this point?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, to all the committees. So I might just add specifically what the zoning bylaw amendment is required for and to achieve. So in this particular instance, it is ordered to facilitate the proposed severance, as well as to fulfill recommendations or recommended conditions of the application for the specific consent. What we're essentially doing is rezoning the severed parcel from the general agricultural zone to an agricultural A3 exception zone. And that exception is required to basically recognize a reduced frontage requirement. So their frontage requirement is in the bylaw 150 meters, whereas the applicant, based on the severance, now would have 125.34 meter frontage. As well, it's to recognize a reduced lot area where typically 39 hectares is required, and they are reduced on that as well. So maybe just a point of clarification. If anyone has any questions, I'd be free to, or I'd be obviously willing to answer those. And also, the agriculture A3 zone specifically limits the ability of the applicant of the land to allow for any type of residential use in the future. So any type of residential use would not be able to be established on those severed agricultural lands for the future. And then the balance, the remaining lands in this case, the remnant lands, which are the lands with the residents, would be rezoned to a surplus farmhouse dwelling zone, basically to recognize the residential use of the lands as well as the reduced parcel size in an agricultural area. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Dan. Any questions with regards to the zoning amendment application and what Dan just presented? Okay, and did the applicant have anything to say to this one at all? Great, thank you. And I don't think we've got any public comments, but if there's any public comments, now would be the time. Okay. And I assume that there's no further questions after that robust discussion. And if not, then I just need to motion to accept this report and the recommendation to accept the zoning amendment application as presented. Councillor Westman and a seconder, Councillor Regan. Any further discussion? All opposed? Carried. And with that, I just need a motion to reconvene our regular council meeting. So if I can get a Councillor Regan and Councillor Mastarakis. All opposed? And that's carried. Thank you. So I guess I should have done this before we moved into council, but the next steps are obviously to remind you to come in and sign the recommendation. That there's a 20-day appeal period, and that starts when the recommendation's been sent out, correct? Right?
Correct. It's a 20-day appeal period following the notice of the decision.
All right. With that, I don't think there's anything else. I'll thank the applicant for participating. Thanks, Dan, for being part of this. And I think that's it for that. Okay, so we'll move forward. And now it's big night. We haven't had this much excitement on a virtual meeting. We do have a delegation, and we've got our friends from Aqua with Rod Dupuis and Renee Hornick joining us. And I think
Lisa, are you able to unmute both of them?
Good evening.
Okay.
So, Madam Mayor, if I can maybe just introduce the two speakers, and then they can present their two reports, the annual report and the quarterly report.
Are they on now as presenters? Because I don't have video of them, or are you just letting them?
See, that's a difference with attendees. There's no videos unless I promote them. So
okay, so you're okay. Just wanted to make sure.
So hello, can everybody hear me?
Yes.
This is Rod Dupuis from Aqua. Thank you, Your Worship, members of council and municipal staff for the opportunity to present to you tonight. We have 2019 annual reports and 2020 first quarter operational reports for both the Lucan and Granton wastewater systems. I'd like to start off with telling you that we're going to maybe touch just the highlights on these reports. Feel free to interrupt me or wait till the end and ask me all the questions that you may have on these two reports. So I'll start off with the annual report for Lucan Biddulph. I'll start off on page number 2. Lucan Wastewater Pollution Control Plant is a class 4 plant. It includes raw sewage pumping station with 5 submersible pumps, force mains, extended aeration, bar screens, grit chambers, aeration basin, secondary clarifiers, return activated sludge system, chemical storage systems, aerobic digesters, sludge storage system, effluent filtration, a UV system, and post aeration system. It has an outfall sewer to the heat and drain. It has standby power, various related buildings for above processes, and it has 2-cell lagoon system for storing excess of flows. Section A is a summary and interpretation of all influent monitoring data and a review of historical trends of the sewage characteristics and flow rates. So this is all flow coming into the facility. The average daily flow in 2018 was 1,047 cubic meters per day. This is a 61.59% of the plant's design rated capacity. The 2019 flows were 1,113 cubic meters per day, and this is 65.48% of the plant's design rated capacity. I'm going to flip to page number 3. You'll see the chart for the raw sewage influent for all these parameters listed below. We have annual average concentration and a maximum monthly concentration for biochemical oxygen demand, total suspended solids, total phosphorus, and if you flip to page 4, we'll have total Kegel nitrogen as well. And basically this chart is saying that we have been consistent with raw sewage characteristics for these parameters from year to year. Section B, a summary and interpretation of all final effluent monitoring data, including concentration, flow rates, loading, and a comparison to design objectives and the compliance limits in the ECA is listed below. If I go to page number 6, you'll see the next chart, and it has the effluent objectives listed for your review. The objectives for pH 6.5 and 8.5 were not met consistently in the months of January, July, September, and October of 2019. And below that, I have all the dates that were listed as such. Process adjustments were made throughout the year to strive to meet ECA final effluent objectives. Alum dosage adjustments were made. Additional in-house testing was completed. If I flip to page 5, you'll have effluent loading limits. And again, you'll see the next following statements below that: annual average concentration and the maximum monthly loadings, all for carbonaceous biochemical oxygen demand, total suspended solids, total phosphorus, and total ammonia nitrogen all been listed. The bacteriological quality of effluent was monitored, and the geometric mean density of E. coli did not exceed the compliance limit of 100 organisms per 100 milliliters of effluent discharge from the works. And if I flip to page number 7, we have the average daily final effluent discharge flow during the 2019 reporting period was 1,069.60 cubic meters per day. Section C, a summary of any deviation from the monitoring schedule and reasons for the current reporting year and a schedule for the next reporting year. I've listed that we've had programming errors on our auto samplers and it needed to be reset. And we listed that Appendix B contains a copy of the 2020 Lucan sampling schedule. Section D, a summary of all operating issues encountered and corrective actions taken. We've listed the SCADA system communication failures and, of course, our challenges that we have for sludge capacity when it pertains to our spring haul for land application. Section E, we have a summary of all normal and emergency repairs and maintenance activities carried out on any major structure, equipment, apparatus, or mechanism forming part of the works. If I flip to page number 8 and also 9, all the way to 10, you'll see that I've listed all the work that we carried out for the entire year. Section F, a summary of any effluent quality assurance or control measures undertaken. We listed that we use an accredited licensed laboratory here in Ontario for our samples. And we have in-house monitoring tests that are conducted by licensed operators using standard methods, and data generated from these tests used to monitor our treatment efficiency while maintaining process control. If I flip to page 11, section G, a summary of all calibration and maintenance carried out on all monitoring equipment to ensure that the accuracy is within the tolerance of the equipment required in the ECA. All our flow meter calibrations and any of the equipment that we have are calibrated by qualified personnel, competent trained operators, or a certified third-party service provider. And Appendix C has all the calibration reports for review. Section H, a summary of the efforts made to achieve the design objectives in the ECA, including an assessment of the issues and recommendations for proactive actions, if any, are required under the following situations. One being that when any of the design objectives is not achieved more than 50% or the time in a year, or there is an increasing trend in deterioration of final effluent quality. Or two, when the annual average daily influent flow reaches 80% of the rated capacity. So we've listed the process adjustments that were made throughout the year to strive these ECA final effluent objectives and these efforts that are included. Section I, tabulation of the volume of sludge generated, an outline of anticipated volumes to be generated in the next reporting period, and a summary of the location where the sludge was disposed. So below we have listed that we've worked with Hodgins Custom Service, not just to haul to our lagoon site, but also for the approved NASM land site as well. On page 12, section J, a summary of any complaints. There was no complaints reported in the 2019 year. Section K, a summary of all bypasses, overflows, and other situations outside normal operating conditions and spills within the meaning of the part excess of EPZ and abnormal discharge events. So there was no spills or bypass or overflows, but what we did include is a chart that shows you all the flow data that exceeded the rated capacity of 1,700 cubic meters per day. Section L, a summary of all notice of modifications to sewer works completed under paragraph 1D of condition 10, including a report on the status of implementation of all modifications. There were no modifications, so no notifications to the water sewer supervisor was applicable at this time. If we go to page 13, section M, a summary of efforts made to achieve conformance with procedure F5, including but not limited to projects undertaken and completed in the sanitary sewer system that results in all bypasses, overflows, elimination, including expenditures, proposed projects. Again, there was nothing to report at this time, but we did include our capital plan for generator maintenance because we felt that at our sewage pumping stations it was a pretty critical piece of equipment to prevent overflows or spills at a sewage pumping station. So we included that in for section M. Page 14, we have flows and sampling summary. Then we're going to have the appendix B for sampling schedule and so on and so forth through our calibration reports. Is there any questions that anyone might have for the annual report for Lucan?
Okay, Councillor Regan. Thanks, Rod, for that.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor. When I was reading through this and you had mentioned that there had been multiple communication failures and it was resolved. I think you said it was resolved, and I'm reading that you had new software. And what I'm wondering is, are we still having multiple communication failures?
Through your worship to Councillor Regan, we've had them up basically right throughout the course of 2019, and then until recently of this year, January in particular, we actually had to replace a hard drive here at the wastewater pollution control plant, and we're working with Mr. Little, of course, even on the water side, because those same communication failures coincide with both water and wastewater. So there has been significant progress made in replacing some outdated equipment. And so far to date, it seems to be resolving the issue, but as soon as it arises, it will certainly be taken care of. And of course, there is also the fact that it needs to be put in the capital planning to update the system as well in the future.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Did anybody else have any questions for Rod at this point? Rod, I was just wondering, with regards to the overflows on page 12, section K, are we concerned with the number of days that we were in an overflow position? Or I guess not overflow, but we were above the ECA design rated capacity. And at what point, at what number of days is that a concern? If you understand.
Well, right now we have the 2 cell lagoons that are able to handle these excess flow. Mm-hmm. So right now that's not the concern that we should be worrying about right now, because we're able just to put these high flow events to these lagoon cells. It's the concern that we're going to have is actually the rated capacity. The closer we get to 1,700 cubic meters per day, these are the challenges that we're going to have moving forward. And when I get to the operational reports, you're going to see some of these challenges show themselves when it pertains to capacity. But this just gives you an idea of how important those cells are and what it means to this system when it has these high rain events. So that's why I like this chart, because if I didn't have this lagoon cell, that means these flows would be coming right to the plant and I'd have to try to treat that.
Okay. And then the other one that caught my eye when you mentioned was early on with regards, I think, to, was it a high pH issue?
Yes.
And that was, again, that was only a couple days, right? That wasn't anything to flag, right?
Yeah, we had some pH, and BM Ross touched base this a little bit under their previous meetings with us as well. So historically, what I've done in the past was I've taken this lagoon cells, raw flow, and I've taken it in and I use that to offset our parameters for pH and alkalinity. And what this data is telling us is that that's probably not going to be the case. These objectives were not met probably 5% within the year. So we met these objectives 95% of the time. So as we increase in capacity, we're going to have more challenges to maintain those objectives. So instead of using the lagoon contents, we're probably going to have to look at implementing a chemical to control pH. And that's something that we're going to have to look forward to the future. And that's what we're doing right now as we speak, is implementing a chemical system to do that.
Okay, great. All right, any other questions on that one? Okay.
So we have the 2019 annual report for the Granton system. And I'll start off on page 2. It is a class 1 wastewater treatment and a class 1 collection system. The plant's rated design is 270 cubic meters per day. So a lot smaller than what Lucan is at 1,700. It consists of sanitary sewers, a sewage pumping station with 2 submersible pumps. It is a rotating biological contactor. So that's what RBC is. Has an influent sampling point, primary sedimentation, secondary treatment, secondary clarifier with 4 submersible pumps, supplementary treatment that has 2 chemicals, one for phosphorus removal, and if I go to page number 3, pH adjustment. tertiary filtration, a UV disinfection system, and final effluent sampling point, a final effluent outfall, and standby diesel generator. Section A, a summary and interpretation of all monitoring data in comparison to the final effluent limits outlined in the ECA. So table 1, effluent limits compared against maximum monthly average concentrations. And if I flip to page number 4, basically it summarizes that the grand effluent samples collected and submitted to the lab for analysis complied with effluent limits for CBOD, total phosphorus, total ammonia, and E. coli, as per the ECA. The total suspended solids monthly average exceeded the environmental compliance limit in January for 2019. So we have a compliance of 10, so we exceeded that. Table 2, the effluent loadings compared against maximum monthly average loading. So this is an annual average concentration with a maximum monthly loadings for CBOD, total suspended solids, total phosphorus, total ammonia, nitrogen, and our bacteriological quality of effluent was monitored with, and the geometric mean density of E. coli did not exceed the compliance limit of 200 organisms per 100 milligrams or milliliters of effluent discharge from the works. On page number 5, the environmental compliance approval requires the effluent pH be maintained between 6 and 9.5 at all times. The final effluent pH was compliant throughout 2019, ranging from a minimum of pH of 6.16 recorded for the month of July to a maximum of 9.5 recorded in the month of December. The average daily flow during 2019 reporting period was 116.06 cubic meters per day. This is 42.99% of the plant's rated capacity. The 2019 average daily flow increased 2.67% from 2018. And the days that the 270 cubic meters was exceeded was the following 7 days, and I've listed them there for your review as well. And Appendix A of the summary of lab data on the flow monitoring. So if I flip to page number 6, Section B, a description of any operating problems encountered and corrective action taken. So with granite, we have a fats, oil, and grease buildup on the RBC unit itself. We use a product called MicroTabs that was added to the system in various locations to help break down this fats, oil, and grease. Alternative products are being reviewed to pilot in the future, which we've already implemented here in 2020. Maintaining final effluent quality compliance proved challenging. In 2019, the Grant RBC process reported total suspended solids monthly average exceeds for the month of January. The final effluent total suspended solids average monthly concentration exceeded the required limit of 10. The concentration was 11 milligrams per liter. This is a non-compliance and was reported to the MECP. So during the month of January, we had process troubleshooting activities, and we have listed them there as adjusted location of depths of temporary clarifier baffle walls. So we felt there was some short circuiting, so we felt that we needed to correct that. We've adjusted chemical dosing to optimize treatment. We reduced clarifier pump run times to reduce flow through the plant. We added additional SCADA programming in order for our backwashing cycles. We also increased our sludge haulage as well in order to rectify that. Section C, a summary of all maintenance carried out in any major structure, equipment, apparatus, mechanism, or thing forming a part of the works. So again, on page 7 through 8 and 9, we've completed all that, or listed all that work for your review. Section D, a summary of any effluent quality assurance or control measures undertaken during the reporting period. So we've listed all our samples are analyzed by SGS, Lakefield, an accredited laboratory in Ontario, and our in-house tests are conducted by licensed operators for operating monitoring purposes using standard methods, and our data generated from these tests are used to determine the treatment efficiency while maintaining process control. Section E, a summary of the calibrations and maintenance carried out on all effluent monitoring equipment. Our flow meters, any of our equipment for process analysis is calibrated by qualified personnel, trained operators, or certified third-party service providers. So on page 10, section F, a description of efforts made and results achieved in meeting the design objectives are listed for your review. So we basically, again, have monthly average concentrations and our maximum monthly concentrations listed below. Section G, a tabulation of the volume of sludge generated in the reporting period. We have the dates and the volumes hauled, and it went to the Lucan Lagoon site. Section F, a summary of any complaints received during the reporting period. There were no complaints to report. Section I, a summary of all bypasses, spills, or abnormal discharge events. There were no bypass events or overflows or abnormal discharges. However, we had one small spill event reported during this period. And on May 7th, 2019, a small volume of chemical spill was reported to the Spills Action Center. It was our PAX loading. The connection pipe at the building broke off, releasing approximately 4 liters. So a very small amount that was released. We contained that spill, used absorbent material, put it in a 20-liter pail, capped it, and labeled it for disposal purposes. And of course, the piping that was damaged was repaired. Section J, a copy of all notice or modifications submitted to the water supervisor as a result of Schedule B, Section 1. There were no modifications that was completed, so there was nothing submitted to the water supervisor. Section 12, or Section K, sorry, page 12, a report summarizing all modifications. Again, nothing to report at this time. And L, any other information the water supervisor requires from the time. Anything that we had when it comes to bypasses, spills, or non-compliances, of course, was submitted as required. We have summary of lab results and flows in Appendix A, and then, of course, our calibration reports. Any questions for the Granton annual report?
Okay, thanks for that report, Rod. Any questions, as Rod asked? Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, just you commented, and it seems like it's commented a lot on the grease and grease issues as far as in the plant. Is with today's technology, and this is kind of a question for you and maybe Ron or Jeff Little, like should our, obviously somebody's abusing it. Should this be, I don't know what our bylaws state, like before we invest in technology to see who's causing this issue, should there be substantial fines so that this isn't costing all our ratepayers so much money to deal with? Like what, I was about to say, is there technology out there to find out who's causing the problem? But if there is, what repercussions is there anyways? And if there's not repercussions, I'd almost sooner have the repercussions and make sure we have it in line and then invest in the technology.
Who wants to take it first?
I'll maybe take it first, if I may, Madam Mayor, through you. And Jeff can clarify this in a second here, but this has been an ongoing problem, and I believe Jeff and Julie in their department, they've done the newsletters, they've done the little cups, and Jeff, I'll let you explain better than I can, but this has been an ongoing problem. It appears that there's one or maybe two people that are abusing the system, and it's causing these issues. So maybe with that, I'll just let Jeff sort of describe what they've done to try and address that first. So, and maybe before we go to Jeff, though, to your point, Deputy Mayor Manders, there are fines in the existing sewer use bylaw. That bylaw hasn't been reviewed for some time, so probably that's a good suggestion. We may pull that and have that, add that to the communications report at the next meeting, just so the members of council are aware of it.
Yeah, no, before just exactly, like I'd like to see us have the fines match what we're about to spend potentially in technology to figure this out. We continue to seem like to talk about it and do nothing further. And I'd really like the people to pay for the technology that we need if it's out there. But sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, Deputy Mayor. So we've started a program to try to get education program to try to get this under control, and we notice it. In Granton more just because it's a smaller plant. That's the way the plant works. The grease shows up in a way that affects the plant more than it does the Lucan system. So I just want to make sure that everybody's aware that it's just not a Granton problem. The problem in Granton is the plant itself and the size of the plant and that sort of thing. So there is an education program in place, and Rod and Aqua have been working, and we were going to try and get into the schools and start doing some education with the children and that sort of thing. Because you can also see in the report that Rod presented, we actually had a mop head go down, flush down the system and plug up and destroy. We had to send one of the pumps out to get fixed. Due to that. So I think the first step is education before we get into enforcement. And like I said, I don't know the long history here. Obviously, Deputy Mayor, there is some history here. So I think the next step will be to do some investigation. We do have some information that we would like to follow up in Granton. And having said that, though, to be honest, I'm in Ron. I'd look for this as the amount of fines that we do have, or the list of fines that we can levy. I would have to look for Ron to actually comment on that. So I think we are moving forward with something, and when we pass it back over to Rod, he can comment on the plan itself. We've added a couple of chemicals, and we've got the plant running better. That can handle the fats that are coming through the system. Renee was really excited in the first quarter of this year. The system is running a lot better. So we have to be careful on how much we want to spend, how much we want to fine, and will it actually stop anything in the long run. But at the same time, I think we have to keep moving forward with investigation. But I think it's a fine line there. Going out in the community and doing that. So hopefully that answers some of your questions. We are moving forward with that.
No, exactly. Yeah. Like adapting to people abusing the system, I'm not a fan of. But I understand what you're saying.
Something I was going to add to that as well is that education program is great. Possibility with even plant tours as well with the general public to get them involved and really discussing these challenges could be a potential game changer when it comes to fast oil and grease. It's not just the total suspended solids issue that we have when it comes to our parameters. It also the weight on the RBC itself can be damaged if this is not controlled, and that's a very costly capital investment on that RBC itself. So again, we've implemented a pilot project with a chemical that we hope to really make some changes on this process, and also I mean to mention too that you start to do some investigative work inside the collection system to really pinpoint where it's coming down. So whether that's auto samplers or just even inspections just to start. And once people start seeing you out there in the system and working to really try to remedy this issue, people will start to change and instead of putting this maybe down the sink as well.
I know that it's funny. I know the City of London, they have a great social media ad that I know Lisa has shared on our platforms about, you know, what you shouldn't throw down the toilet. You know, it's funny. At the beginning of this pandemic, there was so much focus, and I think because everybody was home, about what not to flush and to be really and recognize that. So maybe it's time, I don't know, I guess it's going into the summer, but maybe in the fall we could look at maybe doing, if we're still living under these sort of restrictions, maybe some sort of Facebook Live thing where we take like a virtual tour of one of the plants or something like that. And people can see you know, the sort of things that you know, you come across and the damage that can be done. And then the other thing with regards to the grease cups, you know, we got those right at the time that, you know, all of a sudden the pandemic hit. So we should really try to maybe think of a program where we can let everybody know that we've got them, because I don't think we've had that opportunity yet. So that would be, as I say, if we're still living under these restrictions, we've got the cups, we might as well try to get them out to people. So we should probably try to work on that, I would think, you know, over the spring, summer, or even into the fall, depending on staff levels. But as I say, we've got them. We should get them out to our residents. Okay, any other questions for Rod on the Granton annual report? Okay, at this time, can I get a mover and a seconder to accept the Lucan Biddulph and Granton wastewater treatment plant compliance reports for 2019? And then we'll move on to the operational reports. Councillor Westman and Councillor Regan. Any further discussion? All opposed? And those are accepted as presented. Thank you. Okay, we want to move on to the operational reports for the first quarters. Is that still Rod, or is Renee gonna?
I'll keep going because I was still here for the first quarter. So
yes, I was going to talk to you about that, but anyways.
It's coming, yes. So the Lucan wastewater pollution control plant, I'll start off at the beginning, a total design capacity of 1,700. You'll see the chart below, average daily flow and percentage of average daily design flow. And I think this is a great spreadsheet from 2016, 2017, 2018, 2019, and 2020 data to date, and just for the first quarter, first 3 months of the year. You'll see the average daily flow for January, February, and March, and we put the 2020 percentage capacity to date just for the flow that's coming into the plant. On page number 2, compliance summary, one clarifier was taken out of service for repair and maintenance on February 14th. Additional daily sample collections are required for the duration of this repair. The MECP was contacted and approved daily samples during regular business hours only for this event until this repair was completed. Under occupational health and safety, the first quarter, the COVID-19 pandemic issue was completely brought to the attention of all Aqua staff. Precautionary protection measures were implemented at all facilities. In addition to mandatory PPE worn by operational staff, the following additional steps were taken to ensure safety. Additional PPE and supplies were sourced. The frequency of facility and vehicle cleaning and surface disinfection was increased. Staff reorganization was implemented to meet social distancing requirements where applicable, and facility access to required contractors or delivery personnel was closely monitored. There were no additional health and safety issues identified for the first quarter. Under inspections, there were no Ministry of Environment, Conservation of Parks, or MOL inspections for this quarter. Under general maintenance and plant activities, we have those listed through onto page 3. We have alarms and call-ins, and we have complaints and concerns, and of course the performance assessment report. Chart 1, raw sewage flows in 2020 compared to 2019. So I'd like the idea that we can give you a good visual of what that looks like and a trend as we move forward. If I flip to page number 4, you'll see raw sewage sample results for 2020. For BOD, total suspended solids, total phosphorus, and total Kegel nitrogen. Table 2, the effluent is sampled on a weekly basis for the requirements of the ECA. So this table summarizes all the monthly average results compared against the objectives and the limits identified in the ECA. If I flip to page 5, we have chart 2, the average monthly effluent for CBOD results compared for 2020 to 2019. Total suspended solids below that. If I flip to page number 6, we have total phosphorus. And again, we have identified the objectives and the limits. Total ammonia nitrogen. And at the very bottom, the geometric mean density for E. coli. And that's going to go right onto page number 7. Effluent pH values, we have those listed, maximum limits, minimum limits, and objectives. And then we have the effluent dissolved oxygen values as well for your review. Is there any questions when it comes to the Lucan operational report?
Okay, any questions for Rod on that? Councillor Reagan.
Thanks. Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm just wondering, when I was looking at the charts, it may just be me, but I'm just wondering, what are the limits that we, or what, like, have we exceeded any of the limits that we have, or those measures that I guess the province has in place? But it just, I'm reading the charts and I'm just not sure if I'm reading them right. Like, have we exceeded these at any point in time? Like the recommended levels, or?
So if you go to page number 4 of 7.
Got it, right.
Effluent sample results. And at the very bottom, you're going to see ECA objectives and ECA limits.
Okay.
So the objective is 5 and the limit is 10. So if I go over 10, that means I have a non-compliance, but I strive to meet that 5. Wow. And in February, you're going to see a 7.2 and you're going to see an 8 in March. And then on the pH side, you're going to see a 6.36 to a 7.48. And if you look at my ECA limit, I cannot go below 6, but I have to maintain my objective as 6.5. Okay. So this is what you have for your objectives for all your parameters that's listed above. And this is what we try to meet from an objective perspective and a limit perspective. So back to where my clarifier was taken out of service, we taken it out of service we knew we had a problem because our results were high in-house and our sample results were telling us from the lab that they were high. So I taken this clarifier out of service, and this is a result of me doing some work on that one clarifier when it comes to TSS, total suspended solids. Remember, we were pushing 80% of our capacity in the month of January. We were 60% of our capacity in February, and we're back to 77% capacity in the month of March. So we had very high flows in this first quarter with me trying to take a clarifier out of service to do some repairs and maintenance on it. And these are the results of, even with pH and objectives, this is something we always try to strive to meet at all costs, just to ensure that this facility is operating at its optimum efficiency.
Okay. All right. Thank you. I understand it better. Thank you very much. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Okay. Any other questions for Rod on the operational report? I guess maybe before we move on to Granton, I guess just, did you want to touch on like the flows and the concern, or I guess the capacity, I should say, and the concerns that you've got there, and the work that we're doing with BM Ross and moving towards a potential expansion? Are you comfortable with those timelines? Is the work that we're doing, is it progressive enough?
Through your worship, yeah, the work right now when it comes to our high flows that are coming in the plant, I'm going to touch back to this 2 cells. I'm very happy that with any high flows, we can stick it in these 2 cells at the lagoon, and then we can bring back as needed to treat that flow, or that wastewater, if you will. We're talking about BM Ross, and we're talking about, say, for example, pH. There was 4 months out of 2019, so out of 12 months, there was 4 that we didn't meet the objectives when it comes to our pH. We met this 95% of the time, but there's still that 5%. So the concern would be is that when you have an increase in flow on a consecutive basis that we're seeing, like we have 2 aeration cells, we have 2 secondary clarifiers, we have 2 disc filter units for disinfection. And the challenges that we're having is that when I'm taking something out of service with that high of flow, is really putting some challenges to meeting these objectives. So for example, pH, we're talking about implementing a chemical system now to offset that. So we have now a chemical that's going to do pH control versus as lagoon systems. Are we moving in the right direction? I believe we are. I believe the timelines are satisfactory to meet those requirements. And as this comes in, this plant is operating very well for what the flow is coming in right now. So to answer your question, I believe this is progressing well, and we're just going to continue on with in-house monitoring, adding the chemical, and reducing the flows that are coming into the plant just via the lagoon.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. Any other further questions for Lucan before we move on to the Granton operational report? Okay, Rod, did you want to walk us through Granton?
So with the Granton wastewater treatment plant, we have a total design capacity of 270 cubic meters per day. Again, I've listed data for 2016 all the way to 2020. Again, 2020 was a wet year, so don't be too concerned, or for the first quarter that is, it's been a very wet, so don't be discouraged with that percentage of average daily flow design coming in. And the chart below is the same idea. We had 67%, 45%, and 58% capacity for 2020. I'll flip to page number 2 under the compliance summary. Same idea of when we have a non-compliance that was reported for total suspended solids. This average was exceeded by 10, and it was 11. During the month of January, flows fluctuated drastically due to wet weather. Average daily flow into the Granton plant during the month of January ranged from less than 125 cubic meters per day to greater than 600. So again, that number of design rated capacity was 270. We had up to 600 cubic meters. And as I progress through this report, you'll see how that plays. So of course, we reported that to MECP and sampled accordingly. Under occupational health and safety, first quarter, same thing with the COVID pandemic. Inspections, there was nothing to report from the Ministry of Environment or the MOL. And under general maintenance and plant activities, we have them listed for the first quarter right through to page 3. Under complaints and concerns, there was nothing to report for this quarter. And then we have the performance assessment report that talks about our flows as well. If I flip over to page number 4, raw sewage flows in 2020 compared to 2019 flows. And then on table 1, we have raw sewage sample results for 2020. And on table 2 on page 5, you'll see the effluent sample results for 2020. And again, we have the ECA objectives listed below, and we'll have the ECA limit as well at 10. Effluent carbonaceous biochemical oxygen demand, monthly average on chart 2 for your review for 2019 compared to 2019. Page 6, same thing for total suspended solids, total phosphorus, and total ammonia nitrogen. If I flip over to page 7, you'll see the geometric mean density for E. coli. And below that, you'll see our chart for effluent pH values. If I flip over to page number 8, you'll see our dissolved oxygen. And of course, we've done really well for our DO. Any questions regarding Granton?
Okay, any questions for Rod on that one? Okay, there aren't any on that. So I guess, Jeff, do you have a comment?
Yeah, just before we go on, I want to, I think Rod's going to introduce Renee, just so everybody has a chance to know what's happening and what Rod's been up to He's obviously in a new position, but I'll let him speak on that. And then when Rod, when you're ready, I would like to talk to council about the UV system with Renee is online with us, so we can give council an update on the UV system over at the Lucan plant. So I'll hand it back to you, Rod, and then when you're done, I'll jump in again.
Sure. So as everybody is aware, I've accepted a new position, still with Aqua, but for the municipality of North Middlesex. One of the things, before I introduce the new senior operations manager, I just want to take this opportunity to tell everyone that my time here working in operations was a tremendous experience for me, something that I was very passionate about and I enjoyed very much. It was also the opportunity to be able to work with council and municipal staff on so many community events that I felt really touched me, and it was something that I was really excited about, and it was always something that I enjoyed when it come to the Christmas parades and Bacon Fest, and it's a real testament to what this community is. And it's all of you that I just wanted to say that I'm very thankful, and I'm very privileged to be able to work with you. When it comes to the new senior operations manager, she's very has a wealth of knowledge, very experienced. So I won't tell you that the years of service, but I know that she has an extensive background. So she has a tremendous wealth of knowledge when it comes to operations and maintenance. She has great vision for process optimization, energy efficiency, compliance, health and safety, and in particular for the future of Lucan, she's very highly skilled when it comes to capital project management. She's not just a colleague of mine, but she's been instrumental in my career. She's been a mentor of mine. And again, she's not just a colleague, but I look at her as a really good friend of mine as well. So I'm very happy and pleased and excited to introduce to you your new senior operations manager, Renee Horning. Take it away, Renee.
Why, thank you, Rod. Good evening, Your Worship, Council, municipal staff. I just wanted to give you a little background on myself so you'd know who I am and what I do. I've been in the, well, I was hesitant on saying this as well, but I've been in the water and wastewater industry for more than 32 years. And I hold a Class 4 license in both water and wastewater. I've had the opportunity in the past to work with Lucan Biddulph, both with the water and the wastewater systems back in 2012 when there was a staffing shortage. And I was able to assist in preparing and training on the DWQMS operational plan. And I also assisted with MECP inspections in both the water and the wastewater facilities. I've had the pleasure of meeting and working with Jeff Little and Julie Overholt over the last couple months, and I look forward to our continued partnership. Thank you very much.
Well, before I hand it over to Jeff, I will start by welcoming you, Renee. We certainly look forward to getting to know you and working with you. And we look forward to the day when it's not virtual. But we're glad that you're part of the team. And as I say, we all look forward to meeting and working with you. And Rod, I just want to take this opportunity to thank you for your commitment to Lucan Biddulph. It's been great working with you and getting to know you. You know, I've had the opportunity to see you outside of council meetings at different conferences and that sort of thing. And I have always appreciated your passion for what you do. And I know that you've always been committed to the work that's going on in Lucan Biddulph and everything that you've been part of, whether it's the operations of wastewater or, as you said, the community events. And it's always great to have Aqua, you know, involved in those. And we really do feel that, you know, you're a real community partner. And I think that has a lot to do with how you've gotten to know the community. So we wish you the best of luck over in North Middlesex. As you say, you haven't left Aqua, so, you know, we still can, you know, I guess we can still rely on you from time to time, but we know that this opportunity through Aqua at North Middlesex will be a good one for you. So we wish you the best of luck.
Wonderful. Also, Rod, I'd just like to add on to that. I'd just like to say thank you. You made the transition when I came in definitely a lot easier. You're able to bring me up to speed on a lot of activities that have been taking place, and you didn't overwhelm me all at once. So I would just like to say thank you. And Renee, we're up and going, and I think things are going well. I hate throwing you right into the fire, but I think I did not have not sent out this information yet. I figured we'd do it at this meeting. So Renee, and I guess I'll start, but on May the 22nd to council, we did have a failure at the Lucan wastewater treatment plant of the UV system. Happened late on Friday afternoon, early Friday night. And Renee, maybe I'll let you, I'll throw it over to you and you can explain what happened, and everything's back up and running, but I think we should just run through with what happened there.
Sure, not a problem. So like Jeff mentioned, we had a failure Friday afternoon. As the operator was doing their closing rounds, they noticed that the UV system had failed. And at that time, we called in our in-house electrician to troubleshoot the problem. Unfortunately, there was parts that were needed from H2 Flow, who is the provider of the Trojan UV system equipment. We needed them on site. They didn't have all the parts that were required until Monday. So we did the reports to the MECP as required. We monitored the system. We took samples as required, and we bypassed the UV from Friday, February 22nd until the 26th, sorry about that, in order for H2 Flow to get the parts. We don't believe that we've exceeded or had any non-compliance issues because of it, because E. coli is a geometric means, which is a very forgiving average. So if there's high numbers, the lower numbers kind of counterbalance and keep you within compliance of the limits. H2 Flow was able to fix the units, both of the units, and they've discovered that it was some sort of electrical surge. They don't know if it was a lightning strike or if it was just a surge, but that's what they've concluded. And everything is working properly now.
Great. No, thank you, Renee. I just wanted to make sure council is aware that we did notify the MECP. Everything seems to be within line, and I guess our next quarterly report should show up in some of those readings that will be presented. I'm sure we'll discuss this again, but thanks, Renee, for that update.
No problem.
Councillor Regan, did you have a question? Oh, no? Okay, sorry. All right, any other further comments or questions? Councillor Mastarakis.
You, Madam Mayor. Question, Renee. If it was an electrical surge, can we put a surge protector on? Is there a process? Or are there any other high-risk parts like similar to this where maybe there's a backup needed or on-hand supplies? Is there a process we can put in place to avoid something like this in the future?
We have talked about something to that effect, having spare parts. Some of the parts are very expensive. We also looked into other facilities within the area that had the exact same system. And there were 2 facilities that had the exact same system, but neither had the equipment that was required, unfortunately, to fix the equipment that Friday night. Could we have spare parts? Possibly. Typically, they do have some of those on site, so it's quicker turnaround time. Unfortunately for us, it didn't occur at this time.
How about a surge protector? Maybe I'm thinking of this too simplistically. If it was electrical or something that went through the system, is there like a surge protector we can put in place?
We've talked about that, and H2 Flow is looking into it. There were fuses within the units, and that is part of a surge protection, and they were blown as well as the other equipment. So typically the fuses would be enough to stop the surge, but unfortunately this time it wasn't. And it blew both units, so which is very unusual.
Okay. Are you good with that, Councillor Mastarakis?
Yes, thank you.
All right. All right, well, if there's no other further questions or comments, I just want to thank Rod and Renee for joining us tonight. And hopefully we'll be able to see you soon.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
All right.
Thanks, guys.
All right, thanks. Okay, moving on to our minutes. You have in front of you the minutes for May 19th. And unless there was anything to be amended, can I get a motion, or can I get a mover and seconder to approve the minutes as circulated? Councillor Westman and Councillor Regan. Did anybody have any questions or comments on the minutes? Okay, all opposed to approving the minutes as circulated? And that is carried. Thank you very much. Business arising from the minutes. I don't believe that there's anything ongoing. Or I mean, well, there's lots ongoing, but there's nothing to report on tonight. And unless council had any questions with regards to that or wanted to add anything to business arising. Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to communications. We've only got a few actually this week, and nothing has been flagged for discussion. Were there any reports that any members of council wanted to speak to or had questions on? Okay, so we're going to start something new where we're going to just do a verbal motion to accept the communications as received for information. And you'll notice as we go on, we're going to do more of that procedural, just acknowledging receipt of different reports for information. It may not be something that we have to make a decision on, but it just acknowledges that we've received that information. So could I get a mover and seconder, just a verbal motion to accept the communications as for information? Deputy Mayor and Councillor Regan. All opposed? And that's carried. Moving on to committee reports, CEDC, do we have anything, Lisa?
Just a couple little things. We will have reports next week for Bacon Fest Canada Day. We received a grant. I can't really announce too much yet, but that'll come forward at the next meeting. If you've noticed around town, there's been a few little signs pop up in some of the grass, and that's just kind of another little reminder for people to support local, and their little shamrocks along Main Street with support local on them. So those were kind of a nice little addition to downtown to keep our spirits high for our retailers.
And the last meeting, Councillor Mastarakis mentioned about a survey.
Yeah, we're working on that. We're drafting that. It should be ready for. Does council want to see that ahead of time, or?
I don't think it needs to come to council. I don't know whether you want to maybe send it out to CEDC, since that was one of the things that CEDC was interested in back on.
Sure, and then get them to review the draft. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I can just maybe I'll talk about Canada Day maybe right now while we're kind of just keep going. We did actually get the grant. It was sent in the other day, our $3,200. But what that allows us is the $3,200 to use it from now until March 31st. and they've kind of left it very blankly how we see fit to best celebrate Canada Day in our way. So we have until March 31st. Maybe hopefully things will kind of change come the fall, or we'll have some freedoms maybe to do some things. We put out I guess a call or an email or a post on Facebook asking our residents to submit a video of themselves wishing people Happy Canada Day, or even better for their families and friends or whoever, to sing the national anthem. And what we're going to do is we're going to create a video of our community, and that'll be we'll release that on Canada Day. That's kind of one of our ideas that we're working on right now. Yeah, I think that's it for now.
Okay. So just to confirm that grant that we received, because when you apply for the grant, you have to kind of say what you're going to use it for. So now you don't have to use it for those certain things. You can create.
For Canada Day? Yeah, they basically said, understanding what's going on, no gatherings, all these things. So they basically said you don't have to ask for permission to change what we originally intended that $3,200 to be used for. So,
okay, and it has to be spent by March.
March 31st. Yeah. Another thing is our new town entrance sign should be up this week. I believe Thursday. Murals and Metal will be erecting those now that they're back. Unfortunately, just as they were about to put them up, COVID hit. They closed down. So now it will be June 1st, they open back up. So now they're working on them this week. And I think I've asked the county to look into, we have to redo our township website this year due to software being outdated at the end of this year. So I've asked Morgan and Chris to kind of follow up, because the county was doing an RFP for new websites, because they can't do that anymore. They're too busy. And then I've also asked them to look into Peter, Councillor Masterakis mentioned at an EDC meeting about developing an app for the municipality. Maybe that'll push notifications or schedules, kind of different things like that. Oakville, I think, has a good example of one. So I've asked the county to kind of look into that and what it would take and how much that might cost for us to kind of develop that sort of an app. Let me see. Yeah, and that's it.
Okay. Any questions for Lisa?
Just comment. I was wondering if we, with CEDC committee and maybe Parks and Rec and other committees, should we maybe try to re-engage them through a Zoom meeting just to get updates, get thoughts, and see if we can get something going in that direction? If there's with the changes that have happened, maybe there's people from the banking sector there's people in different areas that may be able to help us moving forward. Another comment of CEDC related, I've been on all these Municipal World podcasts, and they're excellent to get understanding of what municipalities are going through, from if you're not an employee of the municipality and all the work and the load that's happening there in the system. But also there was a great initiative that started, Google's put $1 million out for municipalities in Canada, and for retail digitization, they call it. So starting in Toronto first, it's called Shop Here, and the funds will be available to other municipalities as this goes out. And I'll forward that to Lisa. I just listened to that just the other day, and it'll help in the community, any retailers that have to make a transition, potentially, is my understanding, digitize their business, and hopefully you can apply and get some of those funds. But I'll send the link forward to that.
I know one of our local businesses actually applied for our grant, to our EDC grant, our Main Street grant, to do that, to create, because they hadn't done any online shopping through their website or anything like that. So she used those funds to kind of create her online shopping through her website. So,
Interesting. Okay, any other further questions or comments? Okay, thank you very much. Moving on, Blue Water. Dave.
We had a meeting not too much to report. I had Ron connect with Francis, and have Ron just comment. There was an AMO resolution recommended, I believe. Ron can explain it better on the transition. And right now, I mean, the blue water recycling industry is in quite an influx, and I'm going to just have Ron comment on the commentary him and Francis had. So,
thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor, and then through you, Madam Mayor. I had a good long discussion with Francis, the executive director over at the Blue Water Recycling. So what's happening, and this has been going on for probably, I don't know how many years now, but the move has been towards requiring those who produce the actual products that we buy and consume and can be recycled. The provincial government wishes to make them 100% responsible for the cost of operating the recycling programs in the province. So I guess the big thing now is how do we get from where we are now to that point? And of course, with COVID and everything, that's thrown a wrench into the whole system. But what they are hoping to do is by, I believe it's January 1st, 2023, get municipalities in the province of Ontario to make a decision whether they want to continue to provide their own program, more or less to look after their own recycling program. And in exchange for that, I guess the collective group of recyclers will pay a certain dollar amount per unit or per housing unit or whatever. So that'll be a straight payment to the municipality to continue on with the municipality being responsible for that service. The alternative is that the municipalities may wish to just throw up their hands and say, you know what, we're happy to be out of that game, and let the recyclers actually provide that service in our municipality. And I'm trying to simplify this a little bit, but it's quite a complicated decision. I think in our case, I think generally we're very, very pleased with the service we get from Blue Water Recycling. I think the service we get is second to none. If you think, I actually live in the north end of London, and in London we have one truck that comes. In our case, it is a City of London employee with a truck. There's two people on that vehicle, one person driving, one person throws the garbage in. An hour or 3 hours or 4 hours later, the recycling truck comes by. It's a single operator, but it's operated through a private company, Miller Paving Group, I believe, and the recycling gets picked up. Now, going forward, the City of London has decided they're going to participate in this green bin program to deal with household waste. So that and I don't pretend to know all the details there, but I suspect that's going to be another vehicle coming down the road. It just seems to fly in the face of climate change initiatives and everything else. It just really it makes me scratch my head. And I think we've got a good thing going with Blue Water Recycling. I think we've got an investment there. We have we have a facility. They provide great service in the fact that they look after any complaints. They look after arrangements with the landfill. So we don't, as a municipal staff or council, have to deal with those kinds of things. They look after maintaining the wheelie bins. They look after, they've been a very progressive group. And I think certainly from my standpoint, I'm hoping that all the participants in Blue Water Recycling are going to continue to stand behind them and continue going forward. Obviously, there's a number of conditions attached to that. What happens if a large number decide to pull out? And this is the questions, some of the questions that the Deputy Mayor and I have been talking about. Because I initially said, well, what happens if Blue Water Recycling disbands? What happens to the assets? And the Deputy Mayor was quick to point out, well, okay, that's one thing, but what happens to the debt? Because there is a lot of debt associated with that operation as well, with all the new trucks and everything involved there. So, I mean, those are big issues that are going to have to be addressed over the next few years. There was a report that I believe came out of Blue Water, I think it was last December, talking about at that point the playing field was a little, it seemed anyway, a little more clear. And I believe Blue Water actually recommended that all the collective municipalities that participate in Blue Water sort of aim for an April 1st, 2024 switch over if that was the way that things were going to go. I think at this point, it's very much in a state of flux as to whether, do we go, do we stay, what's happening. And I think we're very well connected. We're, very much so. We're connected with everybody else in that system. So I think the discussion needs to be had with our residents. I think it needs to be had with council as to our satisfaction with the service that Blue Water provides. And really, I think we want to get sort of our comments to members like the Deputy Mayor, and Dave, I'll just get to you in a second. But it really, I think, needs to be a collective decision, and hopefully everybody's thinking the same way we are, and very happy with the service that's provided. So Dave, if you want to unmute yourself, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I agree with everything obviously you said there. Just a couple that, yeah, I mean, our association and all the municipalities involved and have quite an investment there. It's a great sorting center. I think it's going to be part of the future, to be honest. And I think, with the natural gas, with the trucks too, I mean, the evolution potentially to battery is what they're looking at now in the association. But it's regardless of what happens within the province. I mean, these sorting centers and our remote area, I think it's going to be potentially quite an asset. There's a lot of communities that I think would like to have even a place to send their stuff to sorting as we go through this and it evolves. I don't think we want to be first out of the gate on this, that's for sure, on making any rash decisions. I'm just going to say to staff, Tina there, or Madam Mayor, if in the next 2 to 3 to 4 meetings, if it's light, it'd be nice to have Francis in to speak to us potentially, just on, I don't think he's been in quite a while. He's talked to other municipalities. If you guys don't mind, in the next 2 months, if you see a lighter agenda, I'd like to have him just review what we've kind of discussed. So, thanks.
If I can just jump in at one more point, Madam Mayor, it's quite conceivable that at the end of this, the producers themselves may approach Blue Water to provide some of the services to some of these other municipalities that currently don't have Blue Water service. So, this, like the Deputy Mayor said, this may be an opportunity for Blue Water to expand.
I think AMO's done a very good job, probably the last 18 months or so, at a number of the conferences that they host, whether it's the large AMO or the smaller, Roma, OSAMs, those sort of things, of having either a plenary session or a breakout session or concurrent session with regards to recycling. I know at Roma in January, there was quite a large presentation about recycling. So it's definitely going to continue to be a discussion point. And as I say, I think AMO's done a good job of keeping that at the forefront and getting as much information out to municipalities as they can to make an informed decision. So, any questions for Dave with regards to Blue Water? Okay, moving on, Lake Huron, I have a meeting on Thursday. And fire boards, there's nothing. ABCA and Upper Thames, Councillor Westman.
Okay, so we've held our Zoom meetings for the month. Like all municipalities, the conservation authorities are working towards a gradual reopening. Seasonal camping will be opened now, as of yesterday, with restrictions. Some of those restrictions will obviously include social distancing and what have you. The day use at areas like Wildwood, Fanshawe, Piddock, and with ABCA will be areas like Rock Glen and what have you. Day use will be available, but there'll be no washroom or playground equipment available. Just following along with the province's guidelines on COVID-19 restrictions. So we are also working, like the municipalities are, on making sure that our staff is safe. Obviously, we're going to have, if the public will be coming to some of our parks and trails. We'll have staff out there that may be interacting with them. So we're working on that as well. PPE will be made available and education and protocols are in place. So again, we're doing exactly the same thing as all the municipalities are doing. We're working on following the provincial guidelines and slowly opening up. We're also looking at what the cost of all this is going to be, so we can kind of carve that out and have an idea of what we can do to kind of offset some of that cost, and if any assistance will be available after this is all over. So yeah, so that's basically it. Hopefully we have a safe season and people can get out and enjoy the trails and green space. Areas like Fanshawe and Wildwood, the boat launches will be open and they'll be able to get out and get on the water a little bit. And again, it'll be all subject to the COVID-19 protocols, social distancing, and what have you. So that's it.
Great, thanks, Alex. Any questions with regards to either Upper Thames or ABCA? Okay, moving on, nothing from Parks and Rec, and Lisa talked about Canada Day. Okay, staff reports. Ron, do you want to go first?
Sure, thank you, Madam Mayor. The first report in the list is one from Julie Overholt, the Public Works Assistant, and it's regards to the human resources policies and health and safety procedures. So we were asked to basically update the current policies and procedures. The last review and update was done in 2009. There have been numerous staff changes since then. So we are trying to more or less get back on board. So there's a new program that's in conjunction with the WSIB called the Health and Safety Excellence Program, which is providing cost benefit initiatives to participate in learning workshops. So what it is if a municipality joins this program, at the end of it, it actually will reduce our rate. So it's not a small program. It's done over 2 consecutive years. There's 3 mandatory workshops that have to be attended. It covers 5 total topics. But the good part is the township receives $1,000 towards the payment of consultant for each one of the 3 mandatory workshops. So it does offset some of our costs as well. Now Julie was able to partner with 6 other municipalities in this initiative. So it's I think it's quite a good partnership going forward. Our first informational meeting is going to be scheduled for June the 24th via Zoom, of course. And Julie's going to have more information on how and when the workshops will proceed and sort of get a schedule. But you know, council may recall that we did put money away in the budget for 2020 to retain a consultant in order to do this. So I think this is you know, a very fiscally prudent way forward in order to meet our obligations there. So again, the impacts to the budget, the cost for the consultant is $1,000 per day, and the total cost will be dependent on our risk assessment and how much we want her to do. So this will be on a go forward basis. So at this point, you know, I think the recommendation is that council direct staff to participate in this WSIB Health and Safety Excellence Program and Workshop. And at any point in time, if we see it going in a direction we don't want, we can certainly pull out. There's going to be some negative impacts to that. We're not going to see our break, but I think the fact that there's a total of 7 municipalities involved here that are all roughly the same size. I don't have a list for you, but I believe most of them are from Huron County and parts of Bruce County. So I think you know, again, it's good to collaborate with other municipalities, and this is going to be an ongoing program over the next little while. So, thank you.
Okay. Any questions on that report? Ron, can you confirm? So, is that $1,000 per day per municipality, or is it spread amongst the 7 municipalities that are taking it?
I believe the context for that $1,000 a day is if they are in Luc and Biddulph dealing with just Luc and Biddulph things, it is $1,000 per day. If it's a matter of joint stuff, it'll be divided up amongst the 6. the cost, I believe, for the consultant is $1,000 per day. So if they're doing our Lucan Badolf risk assessment, it's costing $1,000 per day.
And at this point, you don't, but we do have money put aside in the budget, but at this point, we don't have an idea of how many days it would be.
No, my understanding is that that will come after the first one, maybe 2 workshops to figure out, you know, we'll have a better understanding, I think, of where we need to be and where we're currently at. So we'll have a better indication of whether that, you know, are we looking at 3 days or we're looking at 10 days, you know, that kind of thing.
All right, any questions on that? Councillor Mastarakis.
Thank you. No, it's good we're participating. Obviously, like you spoke earlier when you started the session today, do better. How can we do better? Ensuring the health and safety of their staff obviously is number one that we all look to do. I see that the risk assessment won't happen for 2 years from now, and the policies are out of date since 2009 or haven't been reviewed. And I believe at the last meeting, Ron, you may have said we do not have a health and safety committee in place. Are there any immediate measures, immediate today, that we can do? It's easy to implement a health and safety committee. It's easy to get them engaged and work with the staff to move things forward to ensure we have certain things in check. The other comment around the consultant, back May of 2019, we hired Cindy McNair. I assumed her role was similar, to review policies and procedures and to prioritize. So how do we get to health and safety in a year later? Is that a low risk for us? Or?
So through you, Madam Mayor, I'll answer your second question first. Cindy McNair really felt that her abilities didn't lend themselves to the health and safety side of it. So her recommendation to Tina and I was that we should look elsewhere because there are specialists in the health and safety field. So that's why Cindy isn't doing this part of it. She's doing the other policy review. So with regard to your first question, it's not my understanding that the risk assessment will be 2 years out. I think the risk assessment may be within the first 6 months, because that's kind of your starting point. That consultant needs to come in and see where we're at and do the risk assessment from that standpoint, and then build your program from there.
Second question, I was speaking to Middlesex Center, and they bring in the Ministry of Labor to do a free audit. And they'll come in and say, this is where you guys are weak, this is where you guys are strong, and it's a no cost to our municipality. Why wouldn't we go for the free assessment?
So through you, Madam Mayor, to answer that question, that's going to be one of the first questions we asked during the June 24th meeting is why can't we piggyback on what the free service is of the Ministry of Labor? And for all I know, Councillor Mastarakis, at that, they may decide that that's the best way to proceed. So at this point, I don't know that won't happen. That could be part of this program with the excellent, this health and safety excellence program.
But do we have a health and safety committee in place that meets the requirements today of the Occupational Health and Safety Act?
We don't have a health and safety committee per se. Each group, the Public Works, the Arena Parks and Rec group, and the office, they do meet, I believe, fairly regularly. In the office, we have monthly inspections that Julie has done and continues to do. I think Jeff Little at the Public Works, I believe you still have monthly inspections out at the Public Works yard. And Paul, you can confirm at the Arena that they have regular. I think the Public Works and the Parks and Rec people call them tool talks or safety talks on a regular basis. And you still have monthly inspections, correct? I see nodding of the heads. Yes.
Okay, and also then if Cindy McNair is not HR, we had she reviewed some policies for the February meeting and gave her comments to bring forward on human resource materials that were still found to be potentially in breach of the law. So where have those gone to?
Okay, at this Through you, Madam Mayor, I'll let Tina jump in because I believe, Tina, you were working on bringing those forward, correct?
Correct. So the last policy was the respect in workplace policy, and it has been reviewed and altered with Cindy. But when the pandemic hit, we decided not to bring any extra material to council at the time. I will be sending that policy out to the policy committee to review and bringing it forward at the next agenda, council agenda for discussion and approval. The remaining HR policies, we do have to have our policy committee meet again to review those and proceed. We had discussed when we originally met, we kind of banged through about 8 to 10 of them, but had decided that we were going to bring them together as a whole instead of individually.
And through you, Madam Mayor, are there minutes of the meetings? Are there notes of the meetings that you can provide us to see what's occurred of those meetings over time?
Through you, Madam Mayor, I kept notes of just rough notes of changes and questions that were asked of each policy, but it was very brief. It wasn't formal minutes at the time. We do need to meet again as a committee to kind of review where we're at with those policies and hopefully bring them forward as a whole instead of, like I said, individual policies at a time.
One more item. I went back to the February 19th meeting and reviewed with the George Floyd scenario and everything else going on, reviewed the code of conduct. And what I was looking for was, I've seen some other code of conducts now that come out that include a whistleblower scenario where something's going on in a workplace that somebody doesn't feel comfortable in saying within the municipality. There's an alternative source to go to talk to. I know we approved the policy. There also didn't appear to be recourse if somebody went through the code of conduct to say if they didn't agree with the resolution. Do you have the notes and comments that were provided by the lawyer from Learners that you can provide that the municipality paid for so we can review to see what his comments were around those areas?
Yes, I'll have to look back and refresh my memory with that, Peter. I can't recall off the top of my head what the comments were, but I can look into that.
Yeah, I understood from that meeting that he provided comments, so it'd be interesting to know. And if you could check if there's in regards to recourse, or if a direct report has a concern, the reporting goes to the CAO. So if there's a concern with the CAO of a municipality under code of conduct, where does that direct report go to? It doesn't have a resolution for that in that policy either. So if you can check back and see what's in that policy, that'd be great.
Okay.
Are you just looking for clarification, Councillor Mastarakis, or are you looking for a complete review of that particular code of conduct again?
Just comments around I want to see what the comments were around from the lawyer from Learners in regard if he spoke to those pieces, and we may have to review. I might bring it back later to see as a comment to review that portion of the code of conduct.
Okay.
Okay, any other questions or comments on this Ron's presented? I guess I have one, Ron, just, so this consultant is through WSIB.
Correct.
And I guess to Councillor Mastarakis' question, I get like, if the Ministry of Labor comes in and does something, then why are we, Ministry of Labor is one thing and WSIB is another. They are two separate things. So I don't know why you would ask the WSIB why you couldn't use the Ministry of Labor. Like,
just a point of clarification, Madam Mayor. I think we can, and that's what we're going to talk about on the June 24th meeting. Like, can we use the Ministry of Labor to do the free part, which is the risk assessment, to come in and do that, and then use the consultant to carry it forward to develop the program, to develop the policies and everything else.
I see. Okay, I understand. So you bring the Ministry of Labor in to do the risk assessment, and then that's what WSIB would use as their point.
Correct. That's my hope, and that's what we hope to clarify in the 24th.
Gotcha. Understood. Comment?
Madam Mayor, if I could just follow up with a little bit too. I've dealt with Ministry of Labor and this sort of situation before. And the one thing they're very good at is telling you where you lack and where you have to improve, but they generally do not want to tell you how to make those improvements because they don't want to be the one, doing that dictation. So I think it's definitely, like Ron explained, Madam Mayor, it's a combination that you can get the Ministry of Labor to give you some direction, whether you're there or not. But then once you are told that you need to improve this certain, aspect of your organization, it's then up to you to do that. They're not the ones that say, okay, you're going to do this, this, and this sort of deal. They kind of leave it up to you to come back to them with a plan. So.
Did you have another comment? Did I see your name? No. Okay. Sorry. Okay. Any other further discussion on that? Okay. What else we got, Ron?
Okay. The second report is actually a joint report with Jeff, and it is in regards to the master servicing plan for the Lucan urban area. So obviously everybody's aware of the rather explosive growth we've had in our community in the last 5 years, and that appears, fingers crossed with this COVID situation, that will continue. We continue to get inquiries about expansion, and not just in residential, but also industrial and commercial areas. So what we're seeing now is we're getting to the edge of the what I'll call the former village limits where it was planned. So when I say planned, I mean as far as hard services go, for sanitary trunk mains, for trunk water mains, for stormwater retention areas, those kinds of things. We're kind of at the limit to where we had previously planned. So now I think it's prudent for council to go to the next step. So you're gonna, what the proposal is, and this can all be funded from the development charges, and certainly the development charges expects these kinds of things to, on a go-forward basis in a growing community. So what we're hoping to do is get council's approval to move forward with an RFP to put out to engineering firms like Dillon, BM Ross, GM Blue Plan, for example, who are familiar with what we have here. And what the RFP will look for is what does the Lucan urban area look like in 25 and 50 years? Where are our pinch points or our constricted areas when it comes to sanitary sewer service? We're seeing developers buying up tracts of land in areas where we know that there's no opportunity to basically to empty those if they were to develop those lands, they can't connect into the existing sanitary sewer collection system, because the existing sanitary collection system was never sized to take into account those lands because they lied outside of the urban boundary. So there's possibly opportunities. The public works manager and I talked about, there's one location where it's quite possible that if we were to oversize the sanitary sewer that's in place on Frank Street, which obviously council knows that that's an upcoming project, if we were to oversize the sanitary sewer, there might be an opportunity for further residential growth in the southwest quadrant, for example. So, and those are just guesses at this point. We truly need an engineer to look at the big picture and sort of figure that out. If we don't do this, what we could be faced with is every developer is going to be having their engineer look at the cheapest and quickest way to service their property, and that may not be in the best interest of the community as a collective. So if we can move forward, and I think it shows that we are a progressive community. If we can say, look, we've got plans, this is how we can service this area over here. I think it serves the purpose of being an orderly growth community. So I think without going too much further, the impacts, the budget, like I said, that'll be funded through the development charges fund. It speaks to our strategic plan, and that it develops, we're developing long-range strategies for managing growth. And it also, we're identifying new infrastructure priorities and prepare strategies to secure funding. So based on that, it's our recommendation that council approve option number 2, and option number 2 is authorize staff to issue an RFP for a servicing master plan for the Lucan urban area. So what that means is Jeff and I will issue an RFP, and then when that comes back, it'll be discussed by councils. Because at this point, we're guessing, we did have an opportunity to sort of get a rough ballpark number, but that rough, very ballpark number was $50,000. So it's not cheap, but I do think it's a worthwhile investment in the future growth of Lucan, the future orderly growth of Lucan, really. So I don't know whether you had anything else to add to that, but I think that's all I need to say.
Yeah, and I think, Ron, you've hit it. I know coming in, one of the things I've noticed in our planning and our moving forward with some of our reconstruction projects and some of our development is we keep adding on. We keep adding on, and we just add a chunk here and we add another chunk, and it's great. And the question is, can that chunk, can the existing infrastructure handle another chunk? And we're starting to see points in the system. Like you say, the pinch points are starting to show up that no, we can't add another chunk, and we can add another chunk. So how do we continue to develop the system without coming to a complete stop just because we've got pinch points in the system? So, and again, this isn't about tomorrow or 2 years down the road. This is for 5, 10, 15 years down the road. Where do we need to invest the money to make sure we're not being restricted just because of poor planning? So I think that's just kind of my 2 cents on why we're bringing this forward. So.
All right, any questions for Ron on this report? Councillor Mastarakis.
Okay, great report. And one of the things that came to mind, and I know Deputy Mayor Dave has a great deal of background and knowledge and enjoys this area of the discussion as well in meetings. Is there, because we're on this growth mode, there's a lot of things to deal with staff and everyone else. Is there not to add more committees, but is there like a development, a growth committee with that would help staff and help move these things forward and build our community faster, more efficiently, and manage that growth? Is there a need, maybe, do you think, Ron or Jeff, for a committee of support in that way? You guys know best, you've done this for years.
If I may, Madam Mayor, I don't know. I mean, education is never a bad thing, Councillor, but I don't know that this would help, other than further educating the members of the committee that are on it. It's quite, it would be an interesting committee to sit on. There's no doubt about it. This is what I feel anyway. That's the most exciting part of my job is the growth, managing the growth and everything else. But I don't know that there's a need for that, because anything that we do as staff, it gets brought to the next council meeting. So ultimately that's up to council, but I don't know that would move things forward any quicker or make it any better. I think, if there's any value in that, it would be in giving you more details than probably would be available at a regular council meeting update. So.
Deputy Mayor.
No, interesting comment, and I'm gonna just reflect on that for a couple meetings, and it's actually something I maybe would not want to sit on. It's easier to complain when you leave council. It'll be easier to complain about that group, but it's just a quick comment. It's funny. I've now turned my on the light at Sainsbury to blaming two previous mayors ago, Tom McLaughlin. And I had a conversation with him just like a couple weeks ago, and I said, how can, you know, it's a good comment, Peter, like as we develop and grow and change agricultural land to future residential, we seem to get in, we don't properly, I feel, build our infrastructure first. And can you imagine the cost of lights? Like I said, how can you guys back then approve a subdivision of 500 houses and another 500 houses on the other side, and thinking that Sainsbury doesn't need a set of lights 10 years ago? I mean, to me, I think that's a little bit, I hate to say it, Ron, but again, a little bit of reflection on previous council and staff, maybe decisions. Again, that sort of planning on that future growth, regardless of how fast it grew, the foresight of a set of lights this late, for me, is disappointing, and I blame Tom. But anyways, it's, you know, anyways, it's live recording. It's something actually I'm not against Peter's comment. It's just interesting. I just thank you. Yeah, that's all.
Well, you may not get a Christmas present this year. Remember, it's on YouTube now. Well, I mean, I don't know if there's any other comments with what Councillor Mastarakis brought up. I would probably want to see more information, but again, then does that muddy the water between council and staff and giving direction and whose job is what? And I don't know. I don't know how that would work, but I would look for staff to maybe contemplate and brew on that. So I just want to make sure that this, like I understand from the servicing, and I get, you know, right now all we do is just kind of add on, and it's like Lego all over the place. But this is obviously, it would complement the report essentially that we got from BM Ross in the summer, when it looked like where there was areas of expansion. Is that kind of what it would do?
So through you, Madam Mayor, to answer that question, it's another piece of the puzzle. Okay. So the development charges, I think your development charges will be based on some of the findings or some of the recommendations that come out of the master servicing studies. What the Jeff, where did Jeff go?
I don't know, but I wasn't talking about the development charges report. I was talking about the future growth.
Yeah. So what I was trying to get at is that this report, this master servicing plan, will lay out where the next trunk sewer is. It'll lay out if we need another pump station. You know, Jeff and I were talking about that earlier today. At some point, we're going to reach the capacity of that existing pump station, and maybe there's another pump station that should be in the, you know, the northeast quadrant of the Lucan urban area or something. Mm-hmm. So this kind of thing looks at a very high level and figures out, okay, this is where we need a trunk water main, which is a collector. And it looks at roads, it looks at water, it looks at storm. So this will form some of the items that you'll see in the next development charges calculation.
Okay, gotcha. Any other questions on that report then? Okay. What else do you have, Ron?
Just a couple of updates. Let me just, if I can move over a bit here. So just with regards to the industrial park, the Glavin Coatings building, I was able to touch base with Matt Glavin there. He's hoping to be in and completed in the next 3 to 4 weeks. So that's great news. Mr. Tony Geertz has also confirmed that his building is close to being fully closed in, and he is continuing with construction. With regards to the community safety and well-being plan, the county has hired a consultant by the name of Jennifer Kirkham. She's been working on the drafting of the plan, and sort of she gave a bit of an update via email, and I'll just quickly go through the email. So she is planning the following next steps. So she'll be sending an email invite to individuals identified for the Community Safety and Wellbeing Plan Advisory Committee to confirm participation, and that should have been sent out the last week of May. After that, they'll hold the Zoom orientation and introductory session for the advisory committee. And the members of the advisory committee are really made up of everybody from social housing, policing, you know, the Abused Women's Center, all the various groups that are in our community. And when I say our community, I mean the Middlesex County community itself. And that includes actually some services from the City of London as well. So after that initial Zoom meeting, they'll record a brief video and slide deck to introduce the Community Safety and Wellbeing Plan and the Middlesex approach to the community partners. And then they'll be doing an online survey with the community partners to gather initial feedback about data, local research, local challenges, issues, and risks. And from there, they'll conduct an inventory of planning tables and what they call asset mapping. After that, they'll complete the data and local research analysis and highlight key findings. They will then present the completed work to the project steering committee. It includes the agenda for a first working session of the advisory committee. And finally, number 8, they'll hold an online working session with the advisory committee to review data collected, survey results, and to identify potential priority risks and focus for the community safety and wellbeing plan. So the end goal is to have a plan that was originally supposed to be in place for the 1st of January. Council may recall at a previous update that date has been kicked sort of down the road a little further to what the final implementation date, we don't know as of yet, but it doesn't have to be done by the 1st of January. But I think at this point, we don't know how far down the road that implementation date will be. So we are continuing on forward. The last item I do have for council is the-
Ron, can I just jump in there actually? Because just to refresh council on that, it was the local CAOs that all got together and they were going to be the committee to come up with this and work together. And then there was somebody on the committee that suggested that there be some elected officials on that committee. I don't know who that might have been as I look at our CAO. So I'm on the committee as well as the deputy mayor from North Middlesex, Adrian Cornelison. And actually it's funny you should bring this up because we met with Jennifer today and had a whole debrief and brought up to the work that's already been done. And I think Adrian's going to be a really good voice on that committee because he comes from a social service and social housing background. So I'm excited about what he can offer. So they're under the impression it's got to be in place for January 21, that was extended to January 1st. But I just wanted to say, she presented to Adrian and I today a PowerPoint of the whole, of basically what you said and kind of what the whole crux of this plan is supposed to be. And it's going to be presented to County Council. So then after that, I've asked that it be distributed to the local municipal partners as well, so that we can all see, because in the end, even though it's going to be a county document, each municipality has to have essentially an appendix that speaks to what is affects their community. So there'll have to be like a Lucan Biddulph tab, and there will be a call out to service groups and faith groups and that sort of thing to try in each individual community to put input into that. So yeah, I just wanted to update you on that.
And the last thing I had on my list here was the just a bit of an update. Thursday, June the 18th is the rescheduled Lake Huron Water Supply System meeting. And Jeff and I are both going to be registered for that one. That was initially supposed to be held at the end of last month, I believe. And what they're looking at is possibly setting up a separate municipal services corporation or a municipal services board to provide those services. And Kathy, Madam Mayor, I know you sit on that board, so you've probably got more information than I do on this, but we will require a legal opinion at some point as to what scenario the services board or the services corporation is the best case scenario for Lucan Biddulph itself. So
we'll be getting an update at our meeting on Thursday, and council will remember this discussion started actually prior to Jeff being in the position when Dave was still here, and Dave and I attended the initial presentation, and then I think Ron, you were at a subsequent one. But basically, there's some gray areas as to where the Lake Huron, where the supply system falls within governing rules, and they want to kind of find a place within the Municipal Act, and they don't have that place right now. And essentially they have to find that place. And so this is what this is all about. So. Yeah.
And Madam Mayor, that's all I have.
Okay. Questions for Ron? Okay. Moving on to Tina, do you have anything?
I don't. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Okay. Nothing in building. Finance, Catherine.
Just a couple comments. So last week our interim tax installment was due, with of course penalty and interest would be waived until June 30th. And I'm happy to report that my early high-level calculations indicate that our outstanding amount is roughly about the same percentage as we were in the last few years. So that's good news, is the majority of our ratepayers are paying their bills on time. But I just want to stress, if there's anyone out there that does have financial hardships due to COVID-19, that they should contact the finance department and figure if we can work with them on any issues they're having with paying those bills. Because we want to, of course, help our residents as much as we can however we can under the circumstances. So just wanted to kind of make high level comments about taxes. And just another point, our on-site audit was postponed and it's going to be rescheduled for June 15th.
That's it?
That's all I have. Thank you.
Questions for Catherine at this time? Okay, moving on. Nothing. Planning, Public Works, Jeff.
Madam Mayor, just before I start the report I've got, I'll do a little bit of a background on what led to this report. LAS has been offering a discount on a company that is in the industry, is well known, and the company is Street Scan, that comes in and they inspect your road system or sidewalk or any infrastructure you have and rate it and put it and able to put it into GIS mapping to be able to give you an update on repairs, maintenance, or replacement. So in the process of LAS doing this, I did meet with representatives of Street Scan about 2 months ago, just to get the idea of what their program offers, because one of my goals this year is to update the asset management plan, and not the asset plan is in good shape. It's to bring more data into the asset management plan, so we have more information in the plan itself. So having said that, we now come up to we weekly, the public works managers throughout the county, we meet weekly. Basically, it started with the COVID situation and is now growing into discussing all activities that municipalities are doing. And one of the things in those meetings that came up is the majority of municipalities in the county want to do this program, want to work at some sort of or gain that sort of inspection, and are interested in the same program. And having said that, Chris Trainey from the county, who's also interested in it, had planned a meeting with Michelle from Street Scan, very similar to what I did, and he was very interested in this program also. Having said that, we then had an announcement from the Federation of the Canadian Municipalities of a program to fund upgrading your asset management plan, bringing these details in, because the overall plan is to keep increasing the the detail of your asset management plan over a number of years. So this program was just announced, and immediately Chris wanted to jump on board with the county, and doing so has offered up all the other municipalities in the township that are in the county to work together towards this program. Because if we all work together, we get a better price. We can consolidate the software. We have servers at the county that can house the information and that sort of thing. So having said that, one of the prerequisites of this program is that each municipality has to pass a resolution that they want to participate as a group member. And having said that, if we pass as a group, we get 90% of the cost of the program funded through the Federation of Canadian Municipalities. So I think there's an overwhelming majority of municipalities in the county, including the county itself, that are proceeding just like I am tonight with everybody with this council, and that presenting this program to each council. So it's based on, each municipality is based on their own estimate or their own road needs. So Luke and Badolf would end up being the cost to the municipality, or the cost of doing the work to the municipality would end up being about $20,000. It's $20,145. With the funding that's available, the funding would be $18,031, resulting in a net cost to the township to proceed with this program of $2,114. In that program, what I've recommended that we look at is all our paved roads in the municipality would get inspected, get rated, and be put into the system. I would also have recommended that we get a 360 degree picture taken on all our paved roads. So at any time we want to go and we want to look up a laneway, a sign, anything that's on our roadway, as long as it's on a paved road, we'll have access to that. As well, again, I think one of the biggest things in our municipality is our sidewalk and the condition of our sidewalk. So I've proposed that we include sidewalk in the inspection. So all the paved roads, all the sidewalk, and a 360, basically for $2,114 cost to the township. The county, like I said, Chris at the county has put forward that he would be willing to do the software and implement that at the county level, so we have access to that. And so moving forward, there would be an annual cost to the software, to the support, and that annual cost would be about $1,800 or $1,875. So that's the program kind of in a nutshell. I think it really would increase our detail in our asset management plan around paved roads, sidewalks, boulevards, and that sort of thing. So that's where I bring it forward. So I look to council to be it resolved that council direct staff, this is my recommendation, direct staff to apply for the grant opportunity from the Federation of Canadian Municipalities Municipality Asset Management Program to advance our asset management program through vehicle-based data, automated data collection for our roads, road and sidewalk assessment, data processing, and pavement management software utilizing a GIS-based software and analytical platform. It's a lot of words to move forward with this program, but what it does is it puts us in as a group. So each municipality is bringing forth the same resolution, the same wording as you see here. So.
Okay, thanks, Jeff. And I can confirm that at last county meeting last week that we passed the same recommendation. So any questions or comments on the recommendation and the report that Jeff just presented? Councillor Regan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So Jeff, I'm just wondering if those that list that you mentioned, is there anything else that we can include that, or is that just sort of like what you get with the package, like the roads, the sidewalks, or is there anything else that we can think of that we want to have looked at, like if with this opportunity?
And through your worship, there is other items that are available, such as we could map every sign, we can map a lot of other things. But at this point, I think in our asset management plan, we're not ready for that. We're not including every sign in the asset management plan. So to go further now would maybe confuse everything in the long run. If we stick to our roads, we stick to our basic items that are in the asset management plan, I think we can get the program up and running a lot smoother.
All right. Thank you. Thanks, Jeff. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Any other comments or questions on that? Okay. What else you got, Jeff?
That's basically the main report. Just an update. Nagel's still moving along, and I think it's the weather's held together, and we're doing everything seems to be moving along there just fine. Gravel starts this Thursday on the east side of the township. So you'll see maintenance gravel go down there starting Thursday. The flower program will swing into full motion next week. It looks like the right full moon has hit, and we're ready to plant flowers next week. So that's great news. They've got the beds already, and everything seems to be looking great that way. So at this point, that's the end of my update for everything. So.
Okay. Thanks for that. Are there any questions for Jeff? Okay, moving on. Parks and Rec, Paul.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This one actually has somewhat of become an evolving report, as I've had new information come in today to update council that I've sent you earlier. So as we all know, during the COVID-19 pandemic, the provincial government has closed all recreational facilities. Community centers put restrictions on team sports, gatherings of larger than 5 people, and as well as put strict guidelines in place to ensure the safety of residents, prevent the spread of COVID-19. As of now, summer staff will be starting to be trained and normally have been hired for the end of March to begin employment for June, and have been put on hiatus for the foreseeable future until restrictions on pools and day camps have been lifted. All prospective summer students have been advised that there may not be any employment this summer with the municipality. So if they get another job offer, they've been advised to accept it, as well as if they'd like to go seek other opportunities. At the previous council meeting, I had said that I'd be bringing a report forward. In it, I've outlined some of the concerns and restrictions that the province has put in place, as well as the comfort level of residents. We felt it appropriate to reach out to residents and have a survey done to see the comfort level to help make a decision on things as the pool and summer camps this summer. So one correction to be made on my report. I have North Huron camps canceled, but another survey that I've provided council, they were unsure of, as well as since then. In fact, during this meeting, I've gotten an email stating that Perth East has now made the decision to have no camps or no pools. So they were undecided before. Most municipalities have leaned towards no pools. A lot more are holding out on summer camps, as the province earlier this month has decided that with no schools and no overnight camps, summer camps may be an additional daycare option for those returning to work. That being said, with the 248 responses, we had 59.7% say they would not feel comfortable sending their child to camp. 23.4% said yes, and 16.9% said maybe. For the pool, 50% had said no, they would not be comfortable sending their child to a pool. 35.5 had said yes, and 14.5 said maybe. We asked them again if they would allow their child to play on public equipment this summer. That was a far closer comment. 30.6% said no, 48.4% had said yes, and 21% had said maybe. As it came to registering their children for summer sports, if registration was open, 39.5% said no, 39.5% said yes, and 21% said maybe. Now, additional comments to that. As of the moment, our Minor Soccer Association has canceled their season for the summer, as well as the men's league soccer has also canceled. Minor baseball has not made a decision yet, but I'd imagine they will follow suit with soccer. A lot of people have been waiting to see. When it comes to pools and summer camps, today I've received some guidelines that if they were to operate, the additional procedures and practices that we would have to implement. And I think it's fair to say that staffing costs would be increased, as well as PPE and procedures. We'd have to pull staff off the grass cutting with our already minimal staff to get the pool ready, which is about a 3-week process if rushed, as well as a 14-day notification for the health unit, depending on their busyness right now during COVID-19. They've been assigned to other duties. They may not have the availability, as well as day camps. We'd have to discuss with staffing, and there'd be additional training. We'd already have them in about 2 weeks for training. There'd be a lot more additional training in order to get them comfortable with PPE, as well as COVID-19 outbreak situations. They have to have a plan in place, as well as screening protocols and practices. And as we hire a lot of students, we'd also have to find out what their comfort level would be in actually participating in those events. I think a lot of these guidelines have been put in place for larger organizations that privately run camps and pools, or large aquatic centers. Some of the guidelines for pools that have been presented forward, I will forward that on to council as well. I received that later. Our pool would be very problematic. They want separate entry and exit points, which we do not have, as well as with the washrooms. They would not want two-way access to the washrooms, which we also don't have. They also would like, if we could, have hand washing stations on the pool deck, which it's all possible, but with something like the pool that doesn't make a significant amount of revenue already, it'll increasingly affect that revenue with the expenses. So I'd like council to have that in consideration when we discuss this. They've also addressed that having 75% reduced bathers than you would normally have to increase on the distancing, which would also be problematic for revenue. As I know it's fantastic that if we teach one kid to swim, we save their life, and that's fantastic. And I've always been hugely for keeping the pool and doing the pool and having the pool open for that exact reason. But I think the expense to revenue for this one is on an operational standpoint, I think it would be against our best interests to operate a pool this season. That being said, it's far possible that the province may not even allow the opening of pools or splash pads this season. We may miss the season anyways by their openings, as well as recreational facilities and community centers. They are also not allowed to be open yet. So I'm a little unclear of where we would fit on having day camps, as where our facilities aren't even allowed to be open.
Okay, that is a lot to digest, Paul. And I want to thank you and your staff for putting together the community survey. I think that that was that's great information for us to have. I think it also allows the community to feel like they've had a part in the decision, whatever it may be. I guess I would just say too that the City of London announced, I guess yesterday, that there's no day camps from their standpoint. So, okay, any comments, discussions on this?
Just, if I may, Madam Mayor, just to add one. Sorry, my notes are just as all over the place on this one. It's also noted that I'm concerned with some of the suggestions for splash pads. I know some of the comments had mentioned some ways that we could approach splash pads, and even that there'll be an additional, they're recommending you have it staffed, which is something we never do, as well as they'd like us to, if they are allowed to open, they'd like you to fence it and have a single entry and exit point as well. And obviously thorough cleaning of all the shared touch surfaces throughout that whole area. So,
okay, thanks for that. Okay, discussion. Councillor Regan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So, Paul, you're asking us this evening to make a decision about whether or not to keep the pools open, the pool open, and the day camps. Is that what we're discussing this evening?
Yes, a few meetings ago, it was posed to us that we should maybe make a decision now rather than later, so residents can start looking at other options, whether it's childcare or somewhere for their child to swim, or even going out and buying a pool for their backyard. Just simply to not keep our residents on the line. I know a lot of people are just kind of, other municipalities are doing a wait and see approach because they're not even sure that the province is going to allow it to open, so they don't want to kind of jump the gun on that. Others have felt almost the exact opposite.
And I hate to be the person to say this, but I'm thinking in light of the situation that we have is that we may want to close the pool, not open the pool, not do the day camps. I mean, I hate saying that. I'm just thinking with everything that's going on, I don't see, I'm just not seeing it getting any better. And again, I just think for parents, especially, if we give them, at least if we make that decision, and we can, if the province says it's okay to go ahead and open a pool and things change, we can always change. I'm sure we're inventive enough to do that. But I'm just thinking at this point, I think parents need to kind of plan. And the parents that I've talked to in the neighborhood, lots of parents, and your survey too, simply, which was well done, and thank you for that. It pretty much says what we had talked about at the last meeting, and I think it was Deputy Mayor Manders and I were talking that the expectations really aren't that high. So I think if we're canceling or not having day camps when we close the pool, at least we've given parents and residents sort of maybe a bit of a head start and maybe planning something else. Again, I hate saying it, but that's kind of a starting point for discussion, I guess. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Regan. Any other comments as to be part of this discussion? Dave.
Yeah, I know. My opinion hasn't changed. I think it's because of COVID-19 that we're doing this. It's best practice and it's mitigation, and I think we need to try to help protect our residents also. It's, to me, I think there's going to be a transition potentially. Obviously, none of us know, but of how to play in communities with the COVID-19, and that'll be obviously a transition that Paul will have to deal with. Hopefully in the fall, because I agree with Daniel. I don't like this. Nobody likes it, but it's just too early. But anyways, I am hoping that there is some less restrictions in the fall that can be practices that can be followed and trusted as good as possible. So anyways, I agree with your what's going to happen for this summer. So.
Okay. Any other comments? Discussion? I think I would echo what the Deputy Mayor just said, is nobody likes making this decision. But I think, Paul, you've laid it out. Obviously there's the safety concerns. That is number one. And then the discussion, if you decide that we're going to open it up, the cost that comes along with that. And, you know, it's one thing, I think, and the deputy mayor said this before, you know, we can plan for this. So let's think of next summer. What is next summer going to look like? We can have the protocols in place for if we're going to be mandated with so much cleaning or staffing or fencing or that sort of thing. But to throw that together when it's June 1st, and you know, every discussion that we've had when it comes to the pool, especially, it's for 8 weeks. That's a huge investment for this community to make, not even knowing that in the end, it will actually get any use out of it. So you know, it's a sad day to say that, you know, potentially we're not going to be in the position of being able to offer this kind of service and these kind of amenities to our community. It is, and nobody enjoys it. But you know, on the flip side, if things get open up, we are an inventive and creative community, and we've rallied before. And you know, who knows if small gatherings get opened up, I can see not only our staff but community groups coming up with ways to, you know, to bring families together or kids together to come up with something, should we be allowed as the summer plays out. So, yeah. Paul?
Just if I may, Madam Mayor, through you, just to echo your comment. And I think that's very important with part of the discussion I had with the phase 2 planning, is that should COVID-19 completely change recreation and how we operate, it would be nice that we have the opportunity that we can address those plans before we start, if we get funding to address those changes. So I think instead of spending the money to do it now, if we get this funding and COVID-19 changes forever how we operate, we can at least address that and wisely proceed with our renovations.
Yeah. Okay, so there's not a motion. There's been no motion that has been prepared. And Paul didn't make a recommendation, but I think if you read between the lines, you saw that he actually was making a recommendation. But I would entertain, I think at this point we can just have a verbal motion, but it will be reflected in the minutes one way or the other. And I would entertain a motion at this time from somebody. Councillor Mastarakis.
I'll make that motion in regards to not opening the facilities for the pool or daycare this summer.
Okay.
Day camps.
In the day camps. Looks like that's seconded by the deputy mayor.
And the splash pad?
I was just going to actually ask about the splash pad, Alex. What are your thoughts? How quickly does it take to turn it on?
The splash pad isn't as much of a concern for getting it ready. It's maybe about a few days, depending if there's anything wrong. The one thing that maybe is the actual getting ready, the restrictions put in place. Luckily, the splash pad can be a longer season. The conversations we've been having though through our recreation groups is that they will be probably following suit with play structures in the provincial government's mandates. So, I mean, I wouldn't make a decision on the splash pad now, because if we can get that going, if we're allowed to get that going and put restrictions in place, that may be our only option for offering people a place to cool down this summer. But as for the pool and day camps, I'd keep those two separate.
Okay. So with regards to the motion then, and Councillor Mastarakis did say that, just limiting it to pool and summer camps, correct? And Councillor Regan, did you have anything more to comment on?
I'm sorry, if I may, Madam Mayor, I just had a question. Paul just mentioned something about the policy changing with respect to playground equipment. Did I missed that?
Oh, I had said that the conversation around play structures, the provincial guidelines for play structures, that splash pads will probably be included in that.
Okay, so if that splash pad, if the splash pads are going to be open hypothetically with the playground equipment, because they're right beside each other,
No, that was the conversation, that we think that splash pads won't be allowed to be open until play structures are. Gotcha. Simply because of the fact, if children are gathering at the splash pad, they're going to also want to gather on the play equipment, and brothers and sisters and parents gathering around the splash pad.
All right. Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Okay. Any other further conversation, questions, discussion? All right. So the motion on the floor would be that we don't open up the pool or offer summer camps this year. And it's moved by Councillor Mastarakis. It was seconded by the Deputy Mayor. All opposed. And that was carried. Thank you very much, Paul.
Thank you. And just on top of that, just a quick update. I have been in contact with Dillon's Consulting and the Soccer Association, and we have gone over some final layout plans for their proposed soccer fields. He's just working on the grading proposal, so I am hopefully going to have that to the Soccer Association and Council to both review, and have a proposal coming forward shortly.
Okay, great. Any questions for Paul outside of, or either with regards to the soccer fields or anything else to do with Parks and Rec? Okay, Lisa, you kind of gave an update when you spoke with CDC, so I don't think there's anything there. Any questions for Lisa? Okay, councillors' comments. Any comments from anybody? Deputy Mayor.
Two things. One, today's meeting, I've noticed the odd freeze from people talking. I don't know if anyone else has. Just the odd freeze from the odd person hasn't been a big deal, but it's going to be a little more concerning if staff can check into that as we get into more planning issues. And I think it's going to be very important to hear every word spoke. I just noticed today's meeting that there's certain times, for whatever reason, it wasn't consistent with Ron or Madam Mayor or anybody really, but the presenters even. But I found at different times through the meeting, there was probably 2 or 3 words not heard, up to 5 even. I don't know if anyone else experienced that. Maybe just nod your head if you did. But I think it's going to be very important if obviously why is that at this meeting? And I haven't noticed it at other meetings as much as this meeting, and again, more concerning for planning. So just a comment to staff if they can figure out why that was. Second thing was, it was a question that I've had residents ask me, and then actually it's a question I'd like answered, or how to answer this question. The long build of a house on Main Street in our community that's going on, probably going to be pushing 3 years. People have asked, is that unique to our community, a build 3 to 4 years? And is there repercussions for that long a build, or can our subdivisions and anyone take 4 years to build a house?
Ron.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you to answer the Deputy Mayor's question. My understanding from the chief building official is that if work continues without stopping for, whether that be 30 days or 60 days, as long as work continues, there's really nothing that can be done. I can think of one more scenario I think in Clandeboye, we're running into this issue as well. So yeah, unfortunately, there's the odd time that this does happen. Thankfully, it doesn't happen often, or we may need to find a different way to deal with this. And yeah, I can't explain it. I don't understand why somebody would take that long to build a house. To me, it just doesn't make any sense. But if you know, I think there's possibly some options that would be available to council to look into if collectively that's what council wants to do.
I think, you know, the time in between inspections or something, some barometer to measure that, probably, because I don't, to your point, you know, doesn't sound like there's any metrics to your, you know, to the answer of what a continuous build is. Does it mean putting in a window once a year? So if there's no measurements on inspections and past inspections to the next inspection, you know, I hate creating bylaws or problems for one-offs and two-offs, but you know, this is our main street across from a great business in our community, and it's just been disappointing. And I'm thinking, you know, how can this not happen again, and how can I be part of that? So
through you, Madam Mayor, what I will do is I'll follow up with Arnie Marsman and get a proper answer for you as to what the building code says and what the restrictions are, and I'll see if he's aware of any other municipalities that have passed something to control that type of a situation. You know, quite possibly the larger municipalities like London may have something on their bylaws that control this type of thing.
And obviously this you know, these properties are coming to complete, but for me, it's all about future, you know, protecting ourselves and our community and really beautifying our community. So anyway, so yeah, no, that'd be good. If everyone else thinks that that's a good idea too, obviously.
Well, I think if Ron at least can bring back that information, then we can jump off at that point to decide if there's anything else that needs to be done.
Okay, thanks. That's it.
Great. Councilor Mastarakis.
Yeah, similar vein where we've had this discussion where someone was looking to buy an industrial park area, where how long before the build happens. So this is a similar theme. How long can they hold the property? What can they do with it, I guess? So it's, I know we've tried to contract individually, but yeah, I agree with Dave. If we could find something, or Deputy Mayor, if we could find something in that regard that helps move forward without creating too many bylaws that we have to dance around, that'd be great.
Yeah, Ron.
Just a quick comment. So obviously there is a clause in the industrial lot sales that they have to build within so much. But I think to your point, Councillor Mastarakis, you know, if they build part of it and then stretch it out, for example, similar to what we're seeing on the main street here, that's not something anybody wants. So yeah, we'll look into that with Arnie and see what mechanisms are out there to address those kinds of issues.
Okay. Right. Any other comments from councillors at this point? Okay, I just have a couple. One, just a reminder, and I think Ron sent out the reminder email today. We extended at the county level the strategic plan survey. So it's been extended till tomorrow night. So if you haven't participated in it, I think it was 11 questions. It wasn't very long. I would ask you to think about doing that. And then the other thing, and it's funny because just in the last 2 days, I've gotten emails. I don't know if anybody saw, there was a story on Channel 10 last night. Councillor in London, Sean Lewis, he's been working with the Thames Valley Council of Home and School Associations, and they've got a program where they're trying to recognize the graduates of grade 8 and grade 12, since unfortunately this year they're not going to have the celebrations that they had that they've traditionally been able to have. So this is run by Home and School, and there's some signs available or they can buy into and everything. This is not something that we need to be spearheading or promoting, I said to Lisa, anything that they send out, we can certainly, help get that message out. I've sent the link to a couple of parents that I know that have graduating students, whether they work with the Holman schools, either at St. Pat's or Wilberforce or Medway, to recognize those students. But the one component of this one, because it's called Go Gold for Grads, and they're asking that municipal buildings, and I believe it's the week of June 22nd, be lit up in gold. So if we've got spotlights, you make them yellow or gold so that they can be recognized. So that program was through the Thames Valley. So that would be something that I would ask that we could be supportive of doing. We've been able to change out the spotlights for different reasons in the past. So if I can get nods of heads, I think that would be a great way to celebrate our graduates. And it was funny, then this afternoon I got a letter that was from Arlene Morel, the chair of the school board, and Sean Hunt. And so again, typical education, you have the Holman School doing one thing and then you have the boards doing another, and it would be great if they came together to do one big thing. And again, it's not something that we as a municipality have to do, but what they're doing again is trying to rally communities to show support for graduates, and if businesses light up and do that sort of thing. And I did kind of I forwarded it to Lisa, and again, I had replied back to Arlene saying, you know, anything that you have from a social media standpoint, we'll support and we will certainly share. But again, that's not something that we need to spearhead, but perhaps maybe we can work with the businesses. Lisa, you've got the contacts. Maybe even if anybody knows a business that's got a sign, maybe for that week in June, everybody could put, you know, congratulations to our graduates. Because it certainly will be a different year for them, and they all look forward to these celebrations. But if they know that their town is behind them and their community is behind them, at least maybe that will help in their celebrations. So that was all I had. Oh, and actually, no, I had one more thing. We had talked about doing a food drive back in May, and that was pushed. So the Lions Club are running a food drive on June the 10th, which is next Wednesday. And they've asked for support for counselors. It's going to be obviously a contactless one, and where we're asking residents to put donations at the end of the driveway, and we'll be hitting Granton and Lucan. So if we could if counselors are available that day to help, it's 7 o'clock. They'd be meeting at the Lion Shed around 6:30, and you'll be given a route to go pick up food. So if you can let us know if you're available, that would be great. And I think Lisa's working with the Lions Club to get some promotion for that. So we want to make sure that that's successful for the Elsa Craig Food Bank. And I think that's it. Okay. So there's no changes to budget, no notices or any notices of motion. Okay, so we'll move on to our motions. Resolved that the council direct staff to participate in the WSIB Health and Safety Excellence Program and workshop, a mover and seconder for that. Councillor Mastarakis and Councillor Westman. All opposed? And that's carried. Resolved that the council directs staff to issue an RFP, which is a request for proposal for a servicing master plan for the Lucan urban area, and a mover and seconder for this one. Councillor Regan and Councillor Mastarakis. All opposed? And that is carried. Resolved that the council directs staff to apply for a grant opportunity from the Federation of Canadian Municipalities Municipal Asset Management Program to advance our asset management program through vehicle-based automatic data collection for roads and cart-based collection for sidewalks, road and sidewalk assessment data processing, and pavement management software utilizing a GIS-based software analytics program. A mover and seconder for that. Councillor Regan and Councillor Westman. All opposed? And that is carried. Resolved that if no one cares to speak to these bylaws on their first, second, and third reading, that they be considered to have been read a first time and passed, read a second time and passed, read a third time and passed, and that they be numbered 22-2020, the confirming bylaw. A mover and seconder for that. Councillor Regan and Deputy Mayor Manders. All opposed? And that's carried. And resolved that the council meeting be adjourned at 5 minutes after 9. A mover and seconder, Councillor Westman and Deputy Mayor Manders. All opposed? And that's carried. Thank you very much. Great seeing everybody. Everybody's hair is a little bit longer, and we'll see you in a couple weeks.